The first light of dawn crept gently through the small windows of Squidward's home, filtering softly across the walls and painting long, muted stripes on the polished floors. The world outside was waking slowly, the distant sounds of Bikini Bottom rising faintly through the early morning hush. For most, these were ordinary sounds. The distant chatter of fish, the soft slap of waves against the shore, and the occasional faint clang from the crusty crab. But for Squidward, in this quiet hour, they were threads in a delicate tapestry, each one weaving a sense of calm and presence that he cherished deeply. He stirred slightly, shifting in the comfort of his armchair, feeling the familiar contours of the cushions supporting his weight. Every muscle moved deliberately, each motion measured and slow, as if testing the calm of the morning to ensure it would remain undisturbed. He could hear his own breath mingling with the soft rhythm of the world outside, a gentle cadence that mirrored the ebb and flow of the tides beyond the city. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and sea air carried in through the slightly open windows. Squidward closed his eyes, inhaling deeply and savoring the subtle mix of scents, allowing them to anchor him in the moment. The city had not yet fully stirred, and for now, he had this rare gift of unbroken tranquility. Every detail felt amplified: the slight creak of a floorboard, the distant murmur of a passing school of fish, even the soft patter of his own thoughts, moving deliberately like waves lapping against a quiet shore. He rose slowly, each movement conscious and intentional, and walked to the window. From this vantage point, the streets of Bikini Bottom seemed softer, bathed in the early hues of morning. Buildings that were usually loud and chaotic now appeared gentle, their colors muted and welcoming in the delicate light. The ocean beyond reflected a faint shimmer of the rising sun, casting long beams that danced lazily across the rooftops. Squidward let himself linger at the window, observing the small, subtle movements of life below. A pair of bubbles drifted lazily past a coral lamppost, spinning gently in the current. A passing fish moved with careful, unhurried grace, its path weaving seamlessly between stationary objects. He found a quiet satisfaction in noticing these details, small movements that most overlooked in the rush of everyday life. The world, in these early hours, felt intentional, measured, and deeply calming. Turning from the window, Squidward moved toward his clarinet, resting in its stand nearby. Its polished surface gleamed softly in the morning light. He lifted it carefully, aware of the way the weight of the instrument felt familiar and grounding in his tentacle. He brought it to his lips and played a single, slow note, holding it long enough to let the sound resonate fully through the room. The note vibrated gently, filling the space with a smooth, mellow tone that seemed to linger and harmonize with the quiet of the morning outside. He experimented with soft, slow melodies, each one deliberate, unhurried, and rich with subtlety. The music interacted with the quiet of the world beyond the walls, the soft hum of the city, the distant crashing of small waves, the occasional chirp of an early rising birdfish. Squidward found that the melodies he played were not just notes. They were extensions of the morning itself, shaping the calm and amplifying it, creating a bridge between the stillness of his home and the slow awakening of Bikini Bottom. After some time, he set the clarinet aside and walked to the small table by the window. A cup of warm kelp tea awaited him, steam curling in delicate spirals toward the ceiling. He lifted it slowly, inhaling the faintly earthy aroma, before taking a small sip, letting the warmth settle through his body. Even the act of drinking felt deliberate, a mindful ritual that added to the serenity of the morning. Each sip, each breath, each soft movement of his tentacles was a reminder of presence, of stillness, and of the quiet power in simply being. Squidward paused to listen, attuning himself to the subtle rhythm of life beyond his home. A small school of fish passed below, moving in a coordinated, slow pattern that resembled a gentle underwater dance. The soft rustle of the coral, the distant ripple of waves, and the delicate swish of passing currents all blended into a symphony of subdued sounds. He allowed the music of the world to enter him fully, integrating the rhythms of ocean, city, and morning into a sense of calm that was rare and precious. He rose and moved carefully toward the balcony of his home, leaning against the railing to feel the cool ocean breeze on his skin. It carried a mixture of salt, algae, and the faint sweetness of distant flowers, creating a delicate, grounding aroma that filled his senses. Squidward closed his eyes, letting the wind brush across his face, allowing it to mingle with the soft melodies he had just played, and the subtle hum of the city waking slowly beneath him. From this vantage point, he observed the gradual increase of life in the streets below. Most of Bikini Bottom was still quiet, the few early risers moving carefully, their presence gentle and deliberate. Squidward found a particular calm in this observation, noticing the natural rhythms of the world as it shifted from night to day. Each movement was part of a larger, slower story, one that he could perceive only by pausing, observing, and breathing in tandem with the environment around him. As he leaned on the railing, Squidward's thoughts wandered in a measured, reflective way. He considered the days behind him and the days to come, not with anxiety or frustration, but with a quiet curiosity about the patterns and rhythms that shape life in Bikini Bottom. The city, the ocean, and the creatures within it all existed in a delicate balance, moving in a slow, intentional harmony that he had rarely noticed in the rush of his usual days. Eventually, he stepped back into his home, guided by a sense of calm that seemed to pulse with every movement. Squidward moved slowly through the rooms, appreciating the textures, colors, and subtle shifts in light. Every corner, every object, every shadow carried significance in this quiet morning. Even the familiar clutter of his home seemed to contribute to the tranquility, offering small details to observe, consider, and integrate into the stillness he had cultivated. He paused before a small bookshelf, his fingers brushing over the spines of carefully chosen books. Each one was a repository of knowledge, imagination, and quiet inspiration, waiting to be explored in slow, deliberate engagement. Squidward selected a volume at random, its pages soft and inviting, and settled once more into his chair by the window. He opened the book, letting his eyes trace the lines with deliberate attention, absorbing the words not for speed, but for their rhythm, their cadence, and their ability to deepen the calm he felt already. Hours passed without notice, measured only by the subtle shifts in light and the slow movement of shadows across the room. Squidward continued his slow, deliberate routines, sipping tea, playing soft notes on his clarinet, observing the city and ocean below, and reading with full attention. Every act, no matter how small, became part of the morning's meditation, a series of interconnected moments that reinforced the serenity of this quiet time. By the time the sun had risen fully, casting warm, golden light across the city and the ocean beyond, Squidward had cultivated a profound sense of presence. He understood, in a subtle and intuitive way, that this morning, and mornings like it, were not simply intervals of time, but spaces for reflection, observation, and quiet joy. The ordinary world had revealed itself as extraordinary when approached with patience, care, and deliberate attention. He closed his eyes finally, leaning back in his chair, letting the warmth of sunlight, the faint scent of the sea, the soft murmur of life in Bikini Bottom, and the subtle hum of his own breath blend into a single, harmonious moment. In this quiet, meditative morning, Squidward felt a rare, profound sense of connection, not just to his home or the city, but to the slow, deliberate rhythm of life itself. And as he sat in that stillness, fully immersed in the calm of the dawn, Squidward realized that this journey, the quiet observation, the deliberate movement, the attention to detail, was a gift that allowed him to perceive life in its full depth and subtlety, reminding him that peace was not a destination, but a state cultivated through mindful presence, patient observation, and gentle appreciation of the world around him. The day was slowly unfolding, and Squidward remained by his window, letting the soft morning light brush gently across his face and arms. The warmth of the sun was mild and soothing, not harsh, and it mixed with the coolness of the ocean breeze that drifted through the open panes. Every subtle change in air, every flicker of sunlight across the street below, became a detail to observe and appreciate. Squidward felt that these small observations, taken with deliberate attention, created a rhythm that resonated with his own breathing and heartbeat. He leaned forward slightly, allowing the breeze to sweep across his skin and through the soft folds of his clothing. It carried the faint, refreshing scent of salt water and the sweet undertone of distant coral blooms, a combination that was simultaneously grounding and expansive. Squidward inhaled deeply, letting the fragrance fill his senses, grounding him in the present moment. Even the smallest disturbances, an errant bubble drifting by, or a faint scurry of movement below, felt significant when observed slowly and attentively. Beyond the glass, Bikini Bottom was beginning to stir. Fish and sea creatures moved quietly along the streets and sidewalks, their movements unhurried in the soft, filtered morning light. Squidward's gaze followed a school of small fish weaving through a tangle of seaweed, their colors muted yet distinct, forming patterns that seemed almost deliberate in their elegance. Each movement, each pause, each ripple in the current below contributed to a larger, more intricate dance, one that unfolded in perfect harmony with the calm of the morning. He allowed himself to close his eyes for a moment, focusing solely on the sensation of the breeze and the ambient sounds of the waking city. The hum of distant waves mingled with the faint rustle of swaying seaweed, the soft murmur of early risers, and the occasional splash of water from a passing fish. Each sound was clear, distinct, and yet entirely integrated into the broader texture of the world. Squidward found that listening in this way deepened his sense of calm, sharpening his awareness while relaxing his body and mind. Opening his eyes again, he noticed the subtle reflections of sunlight on nearby buildings and the delicate shimmer of water in the streets, slowly rising with the tide. The play of light and shadow was mesmerizing. Long, angled rays illuminated corners of the street while leaving other areas in muted shade, creating a soft, dappled pattern that shifted slowly as the morning progressed. Squidward appreciated these shifts with quiet reverence, recognizing them as fleeting moments of beauty that might go unnoticed in the rush of daily life. A gentle movement caught his attention, a lone bubble drifting lazily along the street, turning slowly in the sunlight. Squidward watched as it floated by, seemingly suspended in time, reflecting fragments of buildings, sky, and ocean in its delicate surface. He followed it with a slow, deliberate gaze, noting the way it interacted with air currents, sunlight, and gravity. The bubble eventually dissipated in the soft breeze, leaving a faint shimmer behind as it disappeared. Yet even in its impermanence, Squidward sensed the intricate pattern it had formed in the space around him, a small, transient piece of the morning's larger rhythm. The breeze carried other subtle sensations, brushing softly against the curtains and stirring small grains of sand that had drifted into the city from the nearby beach. Squidward observed these tiny movements with quiet fascination, noticing how even the smallest shifts in air or motion could transform ordinary objects into living elements of the environment. A small school of fish swirled in a shallow pool below, creating gentle ripples that shimmered across the water's surface. Each ripple moved outward slowly, intersecting with others, forming a quiet, ever-changing mosaic of motion. Squidward felt a sense of gratitude for these ordinary yet remarkable phenomena. The breeze, the light, the ripples, and the distant murmurs of life were not mere background noise. They were integral parts of a living world, waiting to be appreciated by those willing to slow down and observe. In this calm, attentive state, he felt a rare sense of harmony with his surroundings, a deep connection to the textures, sounds, and movements of the city and ocean alike. He adjusted his position slightly, leaning against the window frame, and let the sun and breeze wash over him more fully. The warmth of the light contrasted with the gentle coolness of the air, creating a delicate balance that he could feel with every breath. Squidward closed his eyes once more, allowing himself to become fully immersed in this interplay of temperature, scent, sound, and movement. The sensation was grounding and expansive at the same time, connecting him to both the immediate space of his home and the larger world outside. A few distant sounds punctuated the quiet. The faint scraping of a net being dragged along a dock, the soft hum of a seafloor current, and the gentle tapping of a fish's fin against a coral railing. Each sound was carefully noted, its place in the morning's rhythm appreciated. Squidward discovered a slow, meditative pleasure in noticing these details, understanding that even the most mundane elements of life carried layers of subtle meaning and quiet beauty. The movement of the breeze itself was fascinating. It shifted and changed direction gradually, brushing against the leaves of small seaweed plants, sending tiny ripples across the shallow pools that dotted the streets. Shadows danced with the motion of the air, creating subtle shifting patterns that were never exactly the same twice. Squidward followed these patterns with slow, deliberate attention, recognizing in them the larger truth that life, like the breeze, was always in motion, always evolving, and yet often beautiful in its, quote, quietest moments. He took a slow sip of warm kelp tea, the gentle steam mingling with the soft ocean air, carrying the subtle fragrance of herbs and sea salt. The warmth traveled through him, blending with the calm induced by the breeze, the sounds, and the filtered light. Each sip was deliberate, each inhalation and exhalation measured, reinforcing the sense of grounded presence that had settled over him. As the morning wore on, Squidward noticed small details he might otherwise have overlooked: the delicate glint of a shell resting in a pool, the soft sway of algae caught in a slow current, and the occasional darting movement of a tiny fish. These observations were not hurried. They were savored, integrated into his growing awareness of the richness and complexity of the world outside his window. Every movement, sound, and reflection became part of a larger meditation, a slow, deliberate exploration of existence itself. Squidward leaned back, allowing the breeze to tousle his tentacles slightly, and reflected on the unusual serenity of this early morning. It was rare for him to find such uninterrupted calm, and he recognized that it was precisely the lack of chaos, the absence of noise and urgency, that allowed him to see the world with fresh clarity. The ordinary became extraordinary, the familiar became new, and the slow rhythm of the morning offered him a rare sense of peace and satisfaction. Time passed without notice, measured only by the subtle changes in light and movement outside. Shadows lengthened gradually, sunlight grew warmer, and the breeze shifted imperceptibly in direction and intensity. Squidward remained at the window, fully absorbed in these slow, meditative observations, each one deepening his sense of connection to the world around him. Eventually, he allowed himself to move away from the window, carrying the calm he had cultivated through the rest of his home. Each step was deliberate and mindful, his body moving in harmony with the donner, slow rhythm of the morning. Squidward realized that even the act of walking, when approached with full awareness, could be a form of meditation. The gentle sway of his body, the soft press of his tentacles against the floor, and the measured cadence of his breathing all contributed to a sense of internal balance. By mid-morning, the city outside had fully awakened, but Squidward felt untouched by its bustle. The breeze still carried a subtle fragrance of sea and flowers. The filtered sunlight continued to paint gentle patterns across his rooms, and the rhythm of his surroundings remained harmonious. He understood that this calm, which had begun at dawn, was something he could carry with him, a quiet anchor in the midst of daily life. Settling into his chair once more, Squidward closed his eyes and let the soft sounds of the world outside merge with his own internal rhythm. The movement of the breeze, the faint ripple of water, and the occasional flutter of a passing fin became a continuous meditation, a reminder of the beauty and subtlety inherent in every moment. He whispered quietly to himself, a statement of presence and gratitude. Even here, even now, there is calm, there is order, there is beauty. Carrying the soft music of the waking city and ocean, Squidward, fully present, felt himself integrated into this rhythm, the external world and his internal awareness blending seamlessly into a slow, harmonious pulse. The morning, once ordinary, had become a sanctuary of quiet observation, a space where life's subtle details revealed their profound significance. And so, with the gentle breeze brushing past him, the filtered sunlight illuminating his home, and the quiet hum of Bikini Bottom outside, Squidward remained at ease. He had discovered a slow, deliberate joy in the simple act of noticing, a deep serenity in the unhurried movement of the world, and a rare sense of connection that filled him completely. After a morning spent in quiet observation, Squidward felt a subtle restlessness, not born of impatience, but of curiosity. The world outside called to him, inviting him to move slowly, deliberately, and explore beyond the familiar confines of his home. He decided, with careful consideration, to wander toward a part of Bikini Bottom he rarely visited. A small garden of algae tucked between two coral buildings. It was a place of soft green hues, gentle currents, and quiet life. A space that promised calm reflection and an opportunity to observe the slow rhythms of nature. Squidward moved with measured, deliberate steps, each tentacle adjusting to the texture of the sand beneath him. He noticed the soft press of the grains against his feet, the way the sand shifted slightly under his weight, and the faint, fragrant scent of algae carried on the slow-moving water currents. Each detail was absorbed fully, a meditation in motion, reinforcing the calm state he had nurtured since the early hours. As he approached the garden, the colors deepened. Rich emeralds, muted lime, and soft jade intertwined among the stalks of algae that swayed gently with the underwater breeze. The sunlight, filtered through the water, created shifting patterns on the sand and on the plants, illuminating the garden in a soft, ethereal glow. Squidward paused at the entrance, taking a slow, deliberate breath, and allowed his senses to drink in the subtle textures, colors, and movements of the space. The garden was alive in its quiet way. Small fish darted between the stalks of algae, their movements deliberate yet playful, while tiny crustaceans scuttled along the sand, leaving delicate trails behind. Even the algae seemed conscious, its tendrils swaying rhythmically in response to unseen currents, creating a hypnotic, meditative dance that drew Squidward deeper into the garden. He moved slowly among the plants, letting his eyes follow the undulating patterns of green and the gentle shimmer of the water around them. He paused to examine a particularly delicate cluster of algae, its tendrils curving like the soft arches of a cathedral ceiling. Tiny bubbles clung to the surface, reflecting the light in miniature, distorted rainbows. Squidward reached out carefully, brushing a tentacle against the stalks, feeling the subtle resistance and flexibility, the smoothness of the plant, and the faint vibration of the water as it moved. It was a tactile meditation, an intimate connection with a living element of the garden, one that demanded patience, attention, and reverence. As he continued along the winding path through the algae, Squidward noticed the interplay of life around him. A small seahorse hovered nearby, its movements slow and deliberate, matching the rhythm of the swaying plants. A pair of tiny clownfish swirled around a coral outcrop, their bright colors muted slightly by the soft underwater light. Even the distant hum of the ocean, filtered through the layers of water and sand, contributed to the symphony of calm that surrounded him. Squidward took a moment to sit on a smooth stone at the center of the garden, letting the gentle sway of the algae brush against him. He closed his eyes, focusing on the ambient sounds, the soft rustle of algae, the faint clicks of tiny crustaceans, the distant hum of currents passing through the coral. Each sound was distinct, yet harmonious, forming a living rhythm that resonated with the quiet of his own breath. The garden seemed to respond to his presence. The algae moved slightly more deliberately, as if acknowledging him, and the tiny fish adjusted their paths, weaving around his form with a grace that felt almost choreographed. Squidward realized that his calm attention had created a subtle harmony with the space, a gentle synchronization between observer and environment that deepened his sense of peace. He leaned back slightly, letting the water carry him gently against the stone, and reflected on the simplicity and beauty of this hidden corner of Bikini Bottom. So often he had felt frustrated or impatient with the chaos of the city. Yet here, removed from the noise and commotion, he could see the intricate patterns of life unfolding in a slow, deliberate rhythm. The garden reminded him that calm was not a rarity, but a natural state waiting to be noticed and appreciated. Time passed with imperceptible slowness. The light shifted as the sun climbed higher, casting moving patterns through the water and across the algae stalks. Squidward observed these changes with quiet fascination, noting how even the smallest variation in light could alter the perception of color, depth, and texture. The garden, though simple in composition, revealed itself as a living tapestry of movement, light, and subtle interaction, a world that thrived on the patience and attentiveness of those willing to observe. A soft current brushed against Squidward's side, carrying with it the faint scent of nearby corals and distant ocean plants. The movement was gentle, almost imperceptible, Yet it heightened his awareness of the interconnectedness of the underwater world. Every ripple, every sway of algae, every subtle flicker of a passing fish contributed to a larger pattern, a harmonious system of motion and stillness that mirrored the rhythm of his own internal awareness. He shifted slightly to observe a patch of particularly dense algae where small shrimp scuttled along the stalks. Their movements were quick yet deliberate, precise and purposeful, and Squidward found a curious satisfaction in watching their quiet diligence. Even the smallest life forms seemed to embody a slow, intentional rhythm, a natural harmony that resonated with the deliberate pace of his exploration. Squidward took another slow breath, feeling the weight of the water around him, the slight pressure of currents against his body, and the gentle resistance of the stone beneath him. Every sensation was magnified in the quiet of the garden, each detail a thread in the complex yet serene fabric of life. He realized that calm was not simply the absence of chaos, but the presence of attentive awareness, an immersion into the world's rhythms that allowed even the smallest moments to carry profound significance. He reached out to touch a small, reflective pool nestled among the algae, the surface perfectly smooth except for tiny ripples caused by drifting currents. The reflection of sunlight, algae, and a passing fish created shifting mosaics that danced across the surface. Squidward traced these patterns with his eyes slowly, watching as shapes transformed, intersected, and dissolved, a visual meditation that complemented the gentle rhythms of sound and movement around him. For hours, Squidward moved deliberately through the garden, observing, listening, and connecting with the subtle life around him. He discovered new textures in the algae, noticed small changes in the color and movement of fish, and appreciated the quiet interactions of creatures that often went unseen. Each step, each pause, each gentle breath contributed to a slow, immersive experience that left him feeling both grounded and expansive. Eventually, Squidward settled on a smooth patch of sand near a cluster of softly swaying algae stalks. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and let the gentle motions of water, plant, and creature merge into a seamless rhythm. The garden had become more than a physical space. It was a sanctuary, a teacher, and a mirror reflecting the careful, deliberate cadence of his own mind. He whispered softly to himself, a meditation on the morning and the garden's quiet beauty. Here there is stillness. Here there is order. Here there is life. The words seemed to mingle with the gentle currents, the soft rustle of algae, and the quiet movements of fish, forming a subtle harmony that resonated throughout the space. Squidward remained immersed in this awareness, sensing the interconnectedness of all elements in the garden: light, water, plant, and creature, all moving together in a slow, deliberate ballet. As the sun climbed higher, casting warmer light through the water, Squidward felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The garden had offered him a glimpse of life's intricate rhythm, a reminder of the quiet beauty available to those who observed patiently and without haste. Every detail, the sway of algae, the shimmer of fish scales, the shifting patterns of light, was a meditation in motion, a gentle reminder of the value of slow, deliberate awareness. Finally, Squidward rose slowly, allowing the garden to remain undisturbed, and began the measured journey back toward the streets of Bikini Bottom. Each step was taken with careful attention, the sensations of sand, water, and air grounding him, the subtle lessons of the garden carried gently in his mind. The morning had revealed a world of calm, rhythm, and quiet beauty, and he felt a renewed sense of connection to the city, ocean, and life surrounding him. As he walked, he knew he could return to the garden at any time, a sanctuary of stillness and presence waiting patiently to be explored once more. And with each breath, each step, and each deliberate movement, Squidward carried the serene rhythm of the garden within him, a gentle pulse that would guide him through the hours to come. After his slow walk through the garden of algae, Squidward felt a subtle, lingering sense of calm that seemed to hum quietly within him. Yet, he realized that there was another layer of peace he wished to cultivate, one that came not from observation alone, but from creation. Music had always been his companion, a language that transcended words and allowed him to interact with the world in a deeply personal way. Today, he sought a place where sound could ripple freely, unbroken, and where he could immerse himself fully in the act of playing. He wandered along a quiet street of Bikini Bottom, paying attention to the soft textures of the sand beneath his feet, the faint brush of water currents through open windows, and the gentle sway of seaweed and coral along the edges of buildings. Each motion was deliberate, measured, and slow, enhancing his awareness of the space around him. The city, usually chaotic, was calm in this hour, each sound distant and muted, creating a perfect environment for attentive, reflective music making. Squidward arrived at a small, secluded alcove tucked between two coral walls. The area was unusually quiet, shielded from the main streets, with light filtering softly through the water above, casting gentle, moving patterns on the sand and coral. He set down his clarinet case carefully, noting how the surroundings seemed to invite him to settle, to breathe, and to become one with the space. The stillness was profound, almost palpable, as though the alcove itself recognized his desire for quiet, deliberate creation. He lifted the clarinet from its case and examined it briefly, running his tentacles lightly over the smooth wood and polished keys. The familiar weight of the instrument felt grounding, connecting him to both the present moment and the many hours of practice, frustration, and satisfaction he had accumulated over the years. Squidward positioned himself on a smooth stone, letting the soft sand mold comfortably beneath him, and brought the clarinet to his lips with slow, intentional movements. The first note emerged gently, long and resonant, vibrating in the alcove and mingling with the quiet ambient sounds of the city and water currents. The note lingered, fading slowly, leaving behind a subtle echo that seemed to extend the moment. Squidward allowed himself to focus entirely on the quality of the sound, noticing the timbre, the resonance, and the way the note interacted with the surrounding space. It was a form of meditation, an immersive experience in which every nuance of tone, pressure, and breath became a focal point for awareness. He played another note, then a sequence of slow, deliberate tones, allowing each to resonate fully before proceeding. The alcove responded in its subtle way. The water carried the vibrations, small currents shifted, and even the nearby algae seemed to sway more deliberately, harmonizing with the soft music. Squidward became deeply aware of the interaction between his own sound and the space around him, noticing how each vibration influenced and was influenced by the environment. Time seemed to stretch and fold in the alcove, measured not by clocks or schedules, but by the ebb and flow of music, water, and light. Squidward experimented with soft, contemplative melodies, each phrase drawn out, each pause intentional. He allowed the music to emerge organically, guided by the slow pulse of his breath and the subtle rhythms of the alcove. Even a passing fish that swam quietly by seemed to pause momentarily, drawn into the gentle resonance that filled the space. The sunlight filtering through the water shifted gradually, casting warm, moving patterns across the sand and coral walls. Squidward noted how these visual changes influenced the perception of his music, the light amplifying certain tones, softening others, and creating a dynamic interplay between sight and sound. He adjusted the flow of his playing, following the subtle cues offered by the environment, integrating them into a holistic, immersive experience of creation and observation. He paused briefly, setting the clarinet aside for a moment to breathe fully, feeling the calm settle deeply within him. The ambient sounds of the city, the gentle sway of algae, and the distant hum of water currents had become intertwined with the vibrations of his own instrument. Squidward felt a rare sense of integration, a seamless connection between himself and the surrounding world. It was a form of mindfulness he rarely allowed himself, a total immersion in the present moment guided by sound and observation. Resuming his playing, Squidward experimented with variations in tempo and tone, careful to maintain the slow, deliberate quality that defined this morning. He observed how small shifts in pressure or breath could alter the resonance, creating subtle variations that added texture and depth. The interaction between his music and the environment became a dialogue, each note responding to the gentle movements of water, light, and life around him. A small school of fish drifted closer, drawn by the soft melodies, their movements synchronized with the slow rhythm of the music. Tiny bubbles rose and shimmered in the sunlight, reflecting light across the alcove and adding a visual accompaniment to the auditory experience. Squidward noted the delicate balance between observation and creation, realizing that the act of playing was as much about listening and perceiving as it was about producing sound. He allowed the music to stretch and unfold, phrases overlapping, each one fading naturally into the next. There was no urgency, no desire for perfection, only a deep, attentive focus on the qualities of sound, resonance, and interaction with the environment. The alcove seemed to extend his awareness, amplifying subtle details and inviting a meditative, immersive engagement with every tone. Minutes, or perhaps hours, passed in this state of deliberate exploration. Squidward became aware of his own heartbeat, the gentle ebb of breath, and the subtle energy flowing through his tentacles as they manipulated the instrument. Each note, each phrase, each pause contributed to a growing sense of calm and satisfaction. He felt fully present, attuned to both his own inner rhythm and the gentle pulse of the world around him. Eventually, Squidward lowered the clarinet, allowing the final note to dissolve into silence. He sat quietly for a moment, eyes closed, absorbing the resonance that lingered, the shifting patterns of light, and the gentle movements of the garden algae beyond the alcove. There was a profound satisfaction in this pause, a recognition that music, when approached with intention and mindfulness, could be as restorative and grounding as any quiet walk or reflective observation. He reflected on the unique quality of this experience. In the solitude of the alcove, surrounded by subtle life and filtered sunlight, he had discovered a rhythm that was entirely his own. The act of creating, listening, and observing had become inseparable, forming a seamless meditation that reinforced calm, presence, and connection to the slow, deliberate pulse of life in Bikini Bottom. Squidward rose carefully, returning the clarinet to its case, and allowed himself to linger for a few moments longer. The alcove remained peaceful, filled with the faint echoes of his playing and the ongoing gentle rhythms of life around him. He inhaled deeply, letting the air carry the soft fragrance of algae, coral, and seawater into his senses, grounding him in the experience he had just cultivated. With slow, measured steps, Squidward began his walk back toward the streets of Bikini Bottom. The melodies of the morning still lingered in his mind, a gentle echo of calm that would accompany him throughout the day. Even as the city's usual bustle resumed, he carried the internal rhythm of the alcove, a reminder of the power of mindful creation, attentive observation, and deliberate engagement with the world. He paused occasionally, noting small, quiet details along his path. The shimmer of a passing fish, the gentle sway of distant seaweed, the subtle reflection of sunlight on water. Each observation reinforced the sense of harmony he had cultivated, merging with the lingering resonance of his music to create a state of serene, meditative presence. By mid-morning, Squidward returned to the familiar streets of his neighborhood, the sound and motion of daily life rising slowly around him. Yet he felt untouched by the usual chaos. The alcove, the music, and the careful attention to subtle detail had left a lasting imprint on his awareness. Even the ordinary elements of the city carried a quiet, deliberate beauty, waiting to be noticed by one willing to move slowly and observe fully. He returned home with a sense of calm satisfaction, carrying the rhythm of the alcove and the gentle flow of his music into the comfort of his own space. Sitting again by the window, he allowed himself to pause, feeling the interplay of light, air, and subtle life outside merge with the quiet pulse within. Squidward whispered softly, acknowledging both the morning and the harmony he had cultivated. Music, breath, and observation, all woven together, all part of this quiet moment. The words lingered in the air, mingling with the soft currents and filtered light, a gentle affirmation of the slow, meditative journey he was undertaking. In the solitude of his own reflection and creation, Squidward felt fully present, fully aware, and entirely at peace, ready to continue exploring the subtle beauty of his world in the hours to come. After the serene morning spent playing music in solitude, Squidward felt a subtle curiosity pulling him toward the outskirts of Bikini Bottom. He had often noticed hints of a hidden lagoon while walking along lesser-known streets, glimpses of sparkling water or the glimmer of algae-covered rocks tucked between coral formations. Today he decided to follow these signs with deliberate slowness, letting the rhythm of his steps and the quiet murmur of the city guide him toward a place of deeper reflection. The path to the lagoon was narrow, winding between coral buildings and scattered clusters of algae. Squidward moved with careful attention, each tentacle placement measured and mindful. The soft press of sand beneath his feet, the faint tug of water currents, and the occasional brush of a passing fish created a symphony of subtle sensations that grounded him in the present. Each step was an act of awareness, a conscious merging of body, mind, and environment. As he approached the lagoon, the sounds of Bikini Bottom softened, replaced by the gentle lapping of water against smooth stones and the faint rustle of algae swaying in slow, deliberate motions. The hidden lagoon lay nestled in a shallow depression, surrounded by tall, emerald stalks of algae that curved gracefully toward the surface, creating a private sanctuary of filtered light and serene movement. Squidward paused at the edge, inhaling deeply, letting the gentle scent of fresh water, salt, and faint floral algae fill his senses. The lagoon was alive, with subtle activity. Tiny fish glided effortlessly beneath the surface, their scales catching and reflecting light in muted dancing patterns. Small crabs scuttled along the sand at the edges, leaving delicate trails behind. The water itself seemed conscious, moving in slow, undulating rhythms that mirrored the breathing and attention of Squidward himself. Each ripple, each shift in current, each subtle shimmer of light contributed to a larger, unhurried ballet that surrounded him. Squidward found a smooth rock near the center of the lagoon and lowered himself carefully, letting the gentle movement of water cradle his weight. He closed his eyes for a moment, attuning himself to the harmony of the space, the gentle sway of algae, the muted glint of fish scales, and the soft rush of currents created a symphony of sound that felt both external and internal, resonating with the quiet rhythm of his own breath and heartbeat. Opening his eyes, Squidward observed the interplay of light and water. Sunbeams filtered through the swaying algae, creating intricate patterns of illumination that danced across the lagoon floor. Every subtle shift in light changed the perception of color, depth, and texture, forming a living mosaic that invited contemplation. He allowed himself to follow these patterns with slow, deliberate attention, letting his gaze drift from one glimmer to the next without hurry or judgment. A small school of silvery fish drifted near the surface, moving in synchronized, fluid motion. Squidward noticed the delicate variations in their speed and spacing, appreciating the subtle choreography of nature. Each movement seemed intentional yet effortless, a quiet reminder that harmony often exists in patterns that are observed rather than forced. He felt a gentle sense of kinship with these creatures, recognizing in their calm, deliberate motions a reflection of the slow, mindful pace he had cultivated in his own morning. The surface of the lagoon was broken occasionally by tiny bubbles rising from below, glinting as they caught the filtered light. Squidward traced their paths with his eyes, observing how they twisted and turned, how the surrounding water responded to their ascent, and how their ephemeral presence added texture to the scene. In their brief, delicate journeys, he saw a reflection of life's transient beauty, a reminder that each moment, though fleeting, carries significance when approached with awareness. Squidward's attention shifted to the algae that framed the lagoon. The tendrils swayed gently in the currents, their motion slow and hypnotic. He reached out lightly, feeling the soft resistance and subtle vibrations of the water as his tentacle brushed against them. This tactile connection grounded him further, connecting his presence to the environment in a seamless meditative loop. Every small movement of water, plant, or creature became a thread in a quiet, interconnected tapestry. He leaned back against the smooth stone, closing his eyes again, and allowed his mind to float along with the subtle rhythm of the lagoon. The gentle lapping of water, the soft shimmer of light, and the faint murmur of distant life created a meditative backdrop for reflection. Squidward felt the tension of routine, responsibility, and expectation dissipate gradually, replaced by a deep, satisfying sense of presence and calm. The sunlight shifted slowly overhead, altering the patterns of light and shadow in the lagoon. Squidward noticed how these subtle changes influenced the perception of space, color, and movement. Tiny fish adjusted their paths, algae swayed in new patterns, and even the water currents shifted imperceptibly, creating a constantly evolving, harmonious environment. He observed these transformations with patient attention, recognizing in them a reflection of the larger flow of life itself, never static, always changing, yet inherently balanced. A faint ripple in the water drew Squidward's attention. A solitary seahorse had entered the lagoon, its movements deliberate and unhurried. It drifted past him, pausing occasionally to explore a small patch of algae, its body curving gracefully with each motion. Squidward watched with quiet fascination, noticing how the seahorse's rhythm complemented the gentle sway of plants and the subtle patterns of light. Its presence was a reminder of the delicate balance that exists in natural spaces, where every action contributes to the overall harmony of the environment. Squidward allowed himself to extend his awareness even further, taking in the details of sound, motion, and light simultaneously. The soft lap of water against stones, the faint clicks of distant crustaceans, the gentle shimmer of sunlight through algae, and the synchronized movements of tiny fish all merged into a cohesive, meditative experience. He felt a profound sense of integration, as if the lagoon itself had become a mirror reflecting the harmony of his own internal state. Time seemed to lose its usual meaning. Minutes and hours blended into a continuum of awareness, marked only by subtle changes in light, movement, and sound. Squidward remained fully present, attuned to the delicate interplay of all elements in the hidden lagoon. The space, the creatures, the currents, and his own breath were intertwined in a slow, deliberate rhythm that seemed to exist beyond ordinary perception of time. He reached out once more to touch the water's surface, noting the delicate tension and responsiveness as it shifted beneath his tentacle. The ripples spread outward, interacting with the subtle waves already present, merging and diverging in patterns that were both intricate and harmonious. Squidward observed these interactions quietly, appreciating the beauty of cause and effect and the subtle interconnectedness of all elements within the lagoon. Eventually, he rose slowly, mindful of every movement, and stepped to the edge of the lagoon. The gentle currents continued to sway algae and ripple across the water. The light continued to shimmer, and the fish continued their deliberate patterns. Squidward felt a sense of gratitude for the hidden space, recognizing it as a sanctuary where calm, observation, and reflection could coexist fully. He lingered a few moments longer, allowing the sensations of the lagoon to imprint themselves in his awareness. The soft scent of algae, the gentle press of water against his skin, the patterns of light and movement, all became part of a quiet meditation that he could carry with him into the rest of his day. Squidward knew that the lagoon would always be there, a hidden refuge for reflection and presence, waiting patiently for his return. With slow, deliberate steps, he began the journey back toward the familiar streets of Bikini Bottom. The hidden lagoon had become a living memory, a rhythm and sanctuary that would accompany him in quiet moments of thought, observation, and creativity. The calm he had cultivated there would inform the way he experienced the world, a reminder that peace exists in deliberate attention, slow observation, and immersion in subtle patterns of life. By the time Squidward returned to his own home, the sun had climbed higher, illuminating Bikini Bottom in bright, clear light. Yet, despite the rising energy of the city, he felt untouched by its usual chaos. The hidden lagoon, with its gentle currents, swaying algae, and deliberate movements, remained alive in his mind. He settled near his window, allowing the warmth of the sunlight, the faint hum of life outside, and the lingering memory of the lagoon to blend into a state of serene, mindful presence. Squidward whispered softly, acknowledging the gift of the hidden sanctuary. This place, this stillness, it is always here, waiting, always waiting. And as he closed his eyes, letting the awareness of the lagoon infuse him, he felt a profound sense of peace, a connection to the subtle rhythms of life beneath the waves, a reminder that quiet beauty and harmony exist for those who move slowly, observe carefully, and allow themselves to fully inhabit the present moment. The day had progressed gently, carrying with it the lingering serenity from the hidden lagoon. Squidward sat by his window once more, the filtered sunlight casting delicate, moving patterns across the floor of his home. He rested his tentacles lightly on the windowsill, feeling the smooth texture of polished coral and the subtle vibration of the world outside. Each detail, the faint brush of water against a nearby wall, the soft sway of distant seaweed, the quiet passage of a fish below, was absorbed with deliberate attention. Squidward's gaze fell upon a small, shallow pool on the balcony outside his window. The surface of the water was still, reflecting both the filtered light and the faint shimmer of the sky above. He leaned forward, observing the intricate patterns of reflection and refraction. Every ripple, however slight, altered the way light traveled across the pool, creating tiny mosaics that shifted with imperceptible grace. He found himself captivated, recognizing the pool as a mirror of both the external world and his internal state. For a moment, he allowed his breathing to synchronize with the subtle movements of the water. Inhaling slowly, he felt the rise and fall of his chest, the rhythm of his heartbeat, and the gentle press of the air around him. Exhaling deliberately, he watched as the water's surface responded to the faintest shift in air currents, creating ripples that seemed to mirror the subtle vibrations within himself. The connection was delicate, meditative, and grounding. The balcony pool reflected not only the sky, but also the faint images of nearby buildings, coral formations, and drifting seaweed. Each element was fragmented by tiny waves and bubbles, producing patterns that were never quite the same twice. Squidward traced these reflections with his eyes slowly, allowing himself to observe without judgment, letting the water guide his attention toward a heightened state of awareness. The simple act of watching became a profound meditation, a window into the complexity and subtlety of life itself. He noticed the movement of a single fish below, its body weaving gracefully through a cluster of algae. Its reflection appeared in the pool, merging with sunlight and the faint shimmer of his surroundings. Squidward followed the mirrored movements, observing the interplay of shape, light, and motion. The fish's trajectory seemed deliberate, even contemplative, as if it too was part of the quiet meditation taking place above the balcony. The pool became a focal point for reflection in a deeper sense. Squidward considered his own existence within the flow of time and space, aware of the delicate balance between stillness and motion. He observed the tiny shifts in the water as metaphors for life's subtle changes, small, almost imperceptible movements that, over time, shape perception, understanding, and experience. In this quiet observation, he discovered a sense of harmony that was both external and internal. Squidward's tentacles traced the edge of the pool lightly, feeling the coolness of the water and the smooth texture of the surrounding coral. The tactile sensation, combined with the visual rhythm of the reflections, created a multi-sensory meditation. Every small movement of his tentacles influenced the water's surface, producing ripples that echoed outward and interacted with existing currents. He watched carefully as these interactions unfolded, noting how even minor interventions could create patterns of beauty and subtle complexity. The sun moved higher, altering the angle and intensity of light. Shadows lengthened, shifted, and blended with the reflections in the pool, producing new layers of texture and depth. Squidward allowed himself to observe these transformations without hurry. Each change in light and shadow added richness to the visual tapestry, reinforcing the meditative quality of the moment. The world, he realized, was in constant subtle flux, and observing these shifts patiently could cultivate an extraordinary sense of calm. A gentle breeze drifted through the open window, stirring the water's surface and sending faint ripples across the pool. Squidward closed his eyes briefly, focusing on the tactile and auditory elements of the movement. The soft brushing of the breeze against his skin, the gentle swish of water, and the distant murmur of life outside merged into a cohesive, immersive experience. He felt completely integrated into the environment, a participant in a slow, deliberate rhythm of sensation and perception. He opened his eyes and noticed the delicate interplay of reflections and ripples once more. The mirrored sky, algae, fish, and sunlight seemed to dance together in a fluid, harmonious pattern. Squidward allowed his attention to move freely among these elements, observing without preference or expectation. letting each detail reveal itself fully in its own time. This approach deepened his sense of awareness, grounding him in a profound, contemplative stillness. The pool's surface occasionally caught the reflection of his own face, distorted by tiny waves and ripples. Squidward studied these mirrored images with gentle curiosity, noting the subtle shifts and contours. Each reflection seemed to carry layers of information, a record of his presence within this space of quiet observation. He realized that the act of seeing oneself reflected in stillness was both grounding and illuminating, offering insight into the relationship between inner state and outer perception. Tiny bubbles rose intermittently from the water, carrying with them faint glimmers of light and subtle changes in motion. Squidward observed their paths, the way they curved and twisted, and the interplay of reflection and refraction on their surfaces. These small, ephemeral details drew his attention to the transient yet significant aspects of life. Each bubble, like each moment, was fleeting yet meaningful, and fully perceiving it required patience, presence, and deliberate awareness. Squidward took a slow breath, aligning himself once more with the subtle rhythm of the balcony, the water, and the surrounding environment. He closed his eyes and allowed himself to drift in this meditative state, the reflections in the water serving as both guide and mirror. The quiet murmur of life below, the sway of nearby algae, and the filtered sunlight all combined to create a tapestry of subtle sensations that carried him into a state of gentle contemplation. He allowed thoughts to rise and pass freely, observing without attachment or judgment. Memories of past days, moments of frustration, and occasional flashes of annoyance floated alongside gentle reflections of beauty and calm. In this space, Squidward found the ability to witness both internal and external experiences without disturbance, allowing each to exist fully while maintaining a sense of centered presence. The afternoon light shifted, introducing warmer hues and casting longer shadows. Squidward noted the changing colors in the reflections, the way the water's surface captured and refracted these tones, and the soft interaction of light with algae and coral. Every nuance became a point of contemplation, a subtle reminder of the intricate beauty present in even the smallest details of life. A school of small fish swirled near the edge of the pool, their synchronized movements producing delicate ripples and reflections. Squidward observed the fluidity and precision of their motion, recognizing in it a natural rhythm that resonated with his own breathing and awareness. Each wave, each shimmer, each reflected color became part of a meditative loop, reinforcing the profound stillness he had cultivated. He placed a tentacle gently on the water's surface, feeling the subtle vibration of each ripple and wave. The tactile feedback, combined with visual observation, created a multi-dimensional experience of reflection, presence, and breath. Interaction. Squidward realized that even simple actions, when performed mindfully, could deepen awareness and enhance the sense of harmony between self and environment. The quiet continued, unbroken by noise or intrusion. Squidward remained in this state for hours, fully immersed in the interplay of light, water, and reflection. He found that his attention to subtle details, ripples, shadows, moving fish, glimmers of sunlight, created a continuous meditation, a gentle rhythm that resonated with the natural flow of life in Bikini Bottom. As the afternoon gradually deepened toward evening, Squidward allowed himself a final, deliberate look at the reflections in the water. He noted the soft merging of light and shadow, the gentle interactions of movement, and the persistent calm that had settled within him. The balcony pool, the hidden lagoon, and the garden of algae had all contributed to a slow, unfolding awareness, each space reinforcing the subtle art of observation, presence, and mindfulness. Squidward whispered softly, a final acknowledgement of the reflective moment. Here, in the water, I see the world. I see myself. I am present. I am calm. The words blended with the gentle ambient sounds outside, the sway of distant algae, and the filtered light dancing on the floor. Squidward felt a profound sense of integration, a seamless connection between inner awareness and external observation. The reflections in the water had become more than a visual phenomenon. They were a meditation, a mirror of life's delicate rhythms, and a reminder of the serenity attainable through patient, deliberate attention. And as the day began to fade into a softer golden light, Squidward remained at the balcony, eyes half closed, breathing slowly, and fully immersed in the quiet, reflective rhythm of the world around him. He knew that these moments, though seemingly ordinary, held profound significance, a steady pulse of calm, a source of insight, and a sanctuary of presence that he could carry with him wherever he went. As the day shifted toward evening, Squidward felt the subtle change in the rhythm of Bikini Bottom. The brightness of midday softened into gentle filtered light, and shadows stretched across streets and buildings, blending in slow gradients with the water's flow. He walked deliberately along familiar paths, noticing how the energy of the city had begun to ebb, leaving space for quiet reflection. Even the faint hum of distant activity seemed gentler now, harmonizing with the natural pulse of the ocean. Squidward paused briefly by a small canal that ran between two coral walls, its waters glinting softly in the waning light. The surface was calm but not entirely still. Small eddies spiraled slowly, shifting the reflections of algae and coral in mesmerizing patterns. He leaned over the edge, letting his tentacles hover above the water, feeling the subtle pull of currents and the faint ripple created by his own movement. Each small sensation was amplified in the quiet of the evening, offering a profound sense of presence and connectedness. A gentle breeze drifted through the city, stirring the algae along the canal and carrying with it the faint, earthy fragrance of salt water and distant coral blooms. Squidward inhaled slowly, letting the scent fill his senses and anchor him to the present moment. The mingling of visual, tactile, and olfactory sensations created a multi-layered awareness, a deliberate meditation in which each detail of the environment became a thread in a harmonious, living tapestry. He observed the interplay of light on the water's surface, noticing how the shifting angle of the sun transformed colors and textures. Emerald green algae seemed deeper, coral surfaces glimmered with subtle warmth, and the faint shimmer of fish scales reflected in delicate, fragmented patterns. Squidward allowed his gaze to follow these reflections slowly, noticing the interplay between movement and stillness, shadow and illumination. The scene became a living painting, ever-changing, demanding patient observation to fully appreciate its nuances. Small fish drifted lazily along the canal, their movements deliberate and unhurried, reflecting the slower pace of the evening. Squidward's eyes followed their paths, noting how each ripple of water influenced the others, creating a delicate choreography of motion. He recognized in this harmony a reflection of his own internal state, a slow, deliberate rhythm that echoed the measured cadence of the world around him. He leaned closer, letting the tips of his tentacles skim the surface of the water, feeling the coolness and subtle movement beneath them. The tactile sensation reinforced the visual observation, creating a heightened awareness of the canal as a living, responsive space. Each ripple produced by his touch interacted with existing currents, forming patterns that were simultaneously transient and intricate. Squidward traced these movements with quiet attention, appreciating the delicate balance of cause and effect in even the smallest of actions. The sunlight gradually softened further, casting warmer hues across the water and surrounding surfaces. Shadows lengthened, blending seamlessly with the subtle reflections of algae and coral. Squidward's gaze lingered on these shifting patterns, noticing how slight changes in light and shadow altered perception, creating new forms and textures. Every moment offered something novel, a subtle variation that demanded careful, patient observation. A small seahorse drifted past, moving gracefully along the edge of the canal. Its presence added to the gentle rhythm of the scene, and Squidward watched as it navigated the interplay of light, current, and plant life with deliberate precision. The seahorse's movements seemed almost meditative, a perfect complement to the slow, reflective pace of the evening. Squidward felt a sense of kinship with this tiny creature, recognizing in its careful motion a reflection of his own. Deliberate attention. The canal carried faint echoes of distant life. The gentle clatter of a passing shell, the soft hum of currents moving through narrow channels, and the distant murmur of fish communicating beneath the surface. Squidward absorbed each sound fully, integrating them into the meditative rhythm he had cultivated over the day. The combination of visual, tactile, and auditory input created a deeply immersive experience, one in which his awareness expanded to encompass both himself and the environment. He shifted slightly to a nearby stone, sitting comfortably and letting the current brush against him. The motion was subtle but grounding, a reminder of the continuous, interconnected movement of the ocean. Squidward allowed his mind to drift along with the currents, observing thoughts as they passed without attachment, while remaining anchored in the sensations of the present. Each ripple, each glimmer of light, each faint sound became a point of contemplation, reinforcing a profound sense of calm and integration. The reflections on the water continued to evolve, shifting with the slow descent of the Sunday colors, deepened and softened, moving from pale greens and blues to warmer ambers and golds. Squidward observed these changes with deliberate attention, noting how even the subtlest shifts influence perception, emotion, and focus. The interplay of light, shadow, and movement became a meditation in itself, a slow, rhythmic exploration of the evening's transformation. Small bubbles occasionally surfaced, catching and scattering light in delicate flashes. Squidward traced each bubble with his gaze, watching its path and noting how it interacted with the currents, algae, and reflections. Each bubble was fleeting yet captivating, a transient element that contributed to the larger harmony of the scene. He recognized in these tiny ephemeral forms a parallel to life itself, fleeting, delicate, and beautiful when observed attentively. A slight ripple from a passing fish caught Squidward's attention, drawing his gaze toward the interplay of water, light, and motion. The patterns created by these interactions were complex and ever-changing, yet they carried a subtle order, a quiet rhythm that resonated deeply with his own internal awareness. Squidward allowed himself to follow the motion, tracing the intricate connections between each element, appreciating the coherence emerging from apparent randomness. The evening air carried a faint, soothing fragrance of distant coral blooms and salt water, merging with the subtle scent of algae and soft sand. Squidward inhaled slowly, letting the aroma ground him in the present moment. Each inhalation deepened his awareness of the environment, each exhalation releasing residual tension and distractions, leaving a focused, meditative calm. He observed the delicate sway of the algae along the canal, noting how each stalk moved individually yet contributed to the collective rhythm of the scene. The subtle movement reflected the slow currents and mirrored the unhurried pace of his own breath. Squidward became aware of a profound resonance between his inner rhythm and the external environment, a harmony that seemed to extend beyond the immediate sensory experience into a quiet, contemplative state. Time seemed to stretch, marked only by subtle changes in light, sound, and motion. Squidward remained fully present, observing the intricate interplay of elements around him. Every small detail, the shimmer of fish scales, the ripple of water, the sway of algae, the glimmer of sunlight, was significant, contributing to the immersive meditation of the evening. He whispered softly, acknowledging the harmony and stillness. Evening, currents, flow, life, moves, and I am here, aware, calm. The words merged seamlessly with the gentle hum of water and the quiet motion of the canal. Squidward felt an integrated connection, a deep sense of presence in which observer and environment, movement and reflection, inner awareness and outer perception coexisted in quiet balance. As the sun approached the horizon, the colors softened further, casting a golden-pink glow across the water. Squidward observed the transition with deliberate attention, noting how the gradual dimming of light transformed the textures, shadows, and reflections. Each shift in perception reinforced the subtle, meditative rhythm of the evening, inviting patience, attentiveness, and immersive observation. He allowed himself to remain in this quiet state until the first hints of twilight appeared, softening the edges of the canal and surrounding structures. The gentle transition from day to evening carried a sense of closure and completion, a natural rhythm that mirrored the ebb and flow of his own awareness. Squidward felt profoundly connected to the world around him, fully integrated into the delicate currents of the city, the water, and the life within. Finally, he rose slowly, allowing the canal and its subtle movements to remain undisturbed. Each step was deliberate, mindful, and in harmony with the meditative awareness he had cultivated. The rhythm of the evening, the currents, and the subtle patterns of light and movement accompanied him inward, reinforcing a sense of calm, focus, and presence that would remain with him long after leaving the canal. Squidward returned home with a gentle, lingering awareness, the lessons of the evening currents carried quietly in his mind and body. He settled once more near his window, allowing the subtle hues of twilight, the soft sound of distant currents, and the memory of the flowing water to merge into a meditative state. In this stillness, he recognized the profound beauty of deliberate observation, patient reflection, and the gentle rhythm of life itself. The sun had fully descended beneath the horizon, leaving Bikini Bottom bathed in the soft, diffuse glow of twilight. Shadows stretched across the streets and buildings, blending seamlessly with the gentle darkness of the deepening ocean. Squidward moved slowly along the familiar streets, tentacles gliding lightly across smooth coral surfaces, noticing how each step seemed amplified in quiet attention by the transition from day to evening. The world had shifted subtly. The rush and energy of the day had dissolved into a gentle, pervasive calm. He paused at the edge of a small pond tucked between coral outcroppings, the water reflecting the faint, muted colors of the twilight sky. The surface was still, but the tiniest currents, driven by the soft movements of distant creatures, created delicate, shifting patterns. Squidward leaned forward, letting his tentacles hover just above the water, sensing the subtle vibrations beneath the surface. Each ripple, each faint disturbance, seemed to echo the unhurried rhythm of the evening, a reminder of the quiet continuity of life in this underwater city. Around him, the light shifted in muted gradients, blending the deep greens of algae with the soft blues of the ocean and the fading amber of sunlight. Every subtle change in hue transformed the perception of depth, shape, and texture, creating a living mosaic that demanded careful observation. Squidward's gaze moved slowly across the pond, following these shifts with deliberate attention, absorbing the intricacy and delicacy of the twilight reflections. Small fish moved cautiously near the edges of the water, their bodies catching the last glimmers of light. Squidward noticed the way each fin and scale interacted with the fading illumination, how their slow movements created patterns of motion that reflected both their own deliberate behavior and the subtle currents of the water. He watched without interruption, recognizing the quiet choreography as part of the larger rhythm of twilight, a delicate ballet of light, life, and movement. The algae along the pond swayed gently in the currents, their tips catching the residual glow of the sunday. Squidward reached out tentatively, brushing against the soft plants and feeling the subtle resistance and vibration transmitted through the water. This tactile interaction, combined with visual observation, created a multi-sensory awareness that anchored him in the moment. He became aware of the interplay between his own presence and the environment, each small gesture affecting the surrounding space in a delicate, observable way. As the light continued to fade, the pond took on a more reflective quality, capturing the muted colors of the sky and the dim outlines of surrounding coral. Squidward watched as these reflections shifted subtly with each tiny movement in the water and with every faint ripple caused by passing currents. The combination of color, motion, and light created a dynamic meditation, one in which observation and presence merged seamlessly. The gentle hum of evening life filled the air, distant currents brushing against coral, faint clicks of hidden crustaceans, the soft rustle of algae swaying in tandem with the water. Squidward tuned his awareness to these subtle sounds, integrating them into a coherent sensory experience. Every sound, movement, and reflection became part of a larger, flowing rhythm, a reminder that quiet harmony exists even in the tiniest elements of the environment. He allowed his mind to drift with the evening currents, observing thoughts as they arose, without interference or judgment. Memories of the day, the morning's music, the hidden lagoon, and the reflections in the balcony pool floated by, each carrying a subtle emotional resonance. Squidward let these moments pass like gentle waves, observing and absorbing without clinging, finding balance in the interplay of memory, perception, and presence. Occasionally, a lone seahorse would drift past the pond, its slow movements and graceful arcs adding a layer of rhythm to the scene. Squidward's attention followed it, noting how its trajectory interacted with the water's subtle currents and the reflections on the surface. Its deliberate pace mirrored his own slow, mindful movements, reinforcing the sense of calm and integration that twilight brought. Squidward's gaze shifted upward toward the faint glimmers of bioluminescent creatures beginning to emerge as darkness deepened. Tiny lights flickered softly in the distance, reflecting on the pond and adding new layers of subtle color and movement. He observed these gentle sparks of life with quiet fascination, recognizing in them the continuity of the ocean's rhythms, even as human perception might label the moment as night. He lowered himself carefully onto a smooth stone by the pond, allowing the water's soft currents to wash over his tentacles. The tactile feedback enhanced his awareness, merging with the visual and auditory impressions to create a fully immersive meditation. Each ripple, each glimmer, each subtle scent of algae or coral became part of a flowing, interconnected experience, a reminder of the gentle, deliberate rhythm of life in this moment. Twilight deepened further, and the pond became increasingly reflective, almost mirror-like, capturing the muted outlines of distant coral, swaying algae, and passing fish. Squidward watched these reflections, noticing how each minor ripple or current created new patterns and interactions. The dynamic surface reminded him that life is never entirely static. Even in stillness, change occurs in quiet, subtle forms. A gentle current brushed past him, carrying faint scents and vibrations. Squidward inhaled slowly, allowing the experience to deepen his connection to the environment. The merging of tactile, olfactory, visual, and auditory elements created a heightened sense of awareness. In this multi-layered meditation, he discovered a profound sense of integration, a harmony between his inner state and the flowing rhythms of the ocean. He observed the gradual transition from day to night, noting how shadows lengthened, colors softened, and the interplay of light and reflection shifted in delicate increments. Squidward allowed his attention to linger on these subtleties, recognizing their significance not as distractions, but as elements of a living, breathing, interconnected world. Each nuance reinforced the meditative state he had cultivated throughout the day. Small bubbles occasionally rose from the pond's bottom, twisting and reflecting the dimming light. Squidward followed each bubble carefully, noting its trajectory, the subtle interactions with currents and surrounding objects, and the ephemeral beauty of its movement. These transient phenomena mirrored the impermanence of life's moments, a reminder that careful observation and presence bring depth and meaning to even fleeting experiences. He whispered softly, acknowledging the rhythm of twilight and his place within it. Twilight. Currents. Reflections. I am here. I am aware. I am calm. The words mingled seamlessly with the gentle sounds of water, the swaying algae, and the faint hum of distant life. Squidward felt a profound resonance, an integration of mind, body, and environment. The twilight, the currents, and the subtle interplay of light and shadow carried him into a state of quiet fulfillment and meditative presence. As darkness continued to deepen, the pond became a sanctuary of subtle light and movement. Squidward remained seated, eyes partially closed, attuned to the rhythms of water, life, and reflection. Every small sensation, the brushing of water against his skin, the soft sway of algae, the shimmer of bioluminescent creatures, was absorbed fully, reinforcing a continuous sense of calm and awareness. The evening stretched, marked only by the gentle progression of darkness and the subtle shifts in the planned environment. Squidward allowed himself to remain fully present, observing and integrating without distraction. Each moment became a meditation, a conscious engagement with the quiet, interconnected life of Bikini Bottom. Finally, he rose slowly, letting the pond's delicate currents remain undisturbed. Each movement was deliberate, mindful, and harmonious, echoing the rhythm he had cultivated throughout the day. Squidward felt a lasting sense of calm, a quiet satisfaction born of patience, observation, and immersive engagement with his environment. He returned home with the fading glow of twilight still lingering in his awareness, carrying the lessons of the evening currents and reflections within him. Settling near his window once more, Squidward allowed the soft darkness to mingle with the memory of the pond, the hidden lagoon, and the gentle music of the morning. In this serene, reflective state, he knew he had cultivated a deep, lasting connection to the rhythms of life beneath the waves. Squidward whispered a final acknowledgement, a quiet affirmation of his day's journey. Reflections, currents, twilight. I am present, I am still, I am aware. And as the first hints of night deepened over Bikini Bottom, he remained in meditative stillness, fully immersed in the calm, flowing rhythm of the world around him, a gentle harmony that would continue to accompany him into the hours ahead. Night had fully settled over Bikini Bottom, casting the city in a serene darkness, punctuated by the soft glow of bioluminescent flora and the gentle twinkle of distant underwater lights. Squidward moved with measured, deliberate pace along quiet streets, his awareness attuned to the subtle sounds and movements of the nocturnal world. The city, so bustling during the day, now existed in a gentle, meditative rhythm, each element contributing to the slow, harmonious cadence of the night. He paused at a small open plaza, where the faint glow of algae and coral created pools of soft illumination. The surface of the water in nearby shallow channels shimmered with reflected light, subtly disturbed by gentle currents and the occasional passing fish. Squidward observed these ripples with careful attention, noting how each small disturbance interacted with the surrounding environment, creating patterns both transient and beautiful. The interplay of movement and stillness mirrored the quiet balance of night, where life continued in delicate, almost imperceptible rhythms. Squidward settled onto a smooth stone near the center of the plaza, letting his tentacles rest lightly on the surface of the water. The tactile sensation was grounding, linking him to the subtle movements of the current and the living ecosystem surrounding him. Each ripple, each shift in light, and each faint sound became part of a continuous meditation, reinforcing the profound sense of presence that nightfall offered. The soft hum of nocturnal life filled the space. Distant crabs scuttling along sand, faint clicks and whistles of small fish communicating, and the gentle sway of algae in rhythm with the currents. Squidward allowed these sounds to form a symphony of quiet harmony, blending seamlessly with the visual patterns of moving light and the tactile feedback of water against his tentacles. Each sense reinforced the others, creating a holistic awareness of night as both a time and a state of being. Above him, the water filtered the faint light from the moon and distant stars, scattering gentle luminescence across the surroundings. Squidward followed the shifting reflections, observing how even the smallest changes in angle or current could transform the patterns and colors. The subtle evolution of light, movement, and reflection invited patience and contemplation, teaching that even in apparent stillness, life remained dynamic and rich with nuance. Occasionally, a lone fish drifted past, its slow, deliberate movements adding rhythm to the scene. Squidward traced the trajectory with his gaze, noting how the gentle sway of its body interacted with currents and reflected light. The small creature's motion was harmonious, almost meditative, complementing his own deliberate, conscious presence. In watching it, Squidward experienced a profound resonance with the quiet, natural order of night, a sense that each element existed in balanced relation to the others. The plaza channels produced subtle echoes as water lapped gently against smooth stones, and Squidward attuned his awareness to these auditory textures. Each small ripple and shift of water carried information, subtle yet meaningful, conveying the quiet pulse of nocturnal life. He allowed himself to follow these patterns, noticing the way sound, movement, and reflection intertwined, creating a seamless, living tapestry of sensory experience. Squidward extended his tentacles into the water, feeling the gentle currents swirl and twist around them. The tactile feedback provided a sense of connectivity, grounding him in the present moment. Every subtle change in pressure or movement influenced the water, producing ripples that interacted with the existing currents. He observed this interaction with careful attention, recognizing the delicate balance between action and response in the environment around him. Above, faint glimmers of bioluminescent creatures punctuated the darkness, their light reflected in the water and on surrounding coral. Squidward's gaze followed their gentle movements, noticing how the interplay of light, motion, and reflection created dynamic, living patterns. These luminous points were transient, flickering softly, yet they contributed to the overall rhythm of nightfall, reinforcing a sense of calm and cohesion. The gentle sway of algae along the edges of the plaza added a visual rhythm, their movements slow and hypnotic. Squidward allowed himself to align his breathing with the subtle flow of the plants, feeling the harmony between his own body and the environment. In this integration, he discovered a meditative state in which thought, sensation, and observation merged into a single, fluid awareness. Each inhalation deepened his presence. Each exhalation released residual tension, leaving a profound sense of calm and clarity. The reflections in the water offered further depth to the experience. Squidward noticed how each ripple altered the mirrored images of coral, algae, and distant lights. Patterns emerged, shifted, and dissipated in a continuous dance, revealing the impermanence and beauty inherent in all things. Observing these transformations became a meditation in itself, reinforcing the understanding that change and stillness coexist, each giving meaning to the other. Small bubbles occasionally surfaced, carrying faint flickers of reflected light. Squidward traced their paths with his gaze, noting the way they twisted and interacted with currents, reflections, and the gentle swaying of algae. Each bubble was ephemeral, yet its movement was deliberate and harmonious, a miniature reflection of the larger rhythm of night. In these small, transient phenomena, he recognized the richness and subtlety of the world, and the importance of presence in perceiving its beauty. Squidward allowed himself to observe his own reflection in the water, distorted by ripples and currents. The mirrored image was never static, continuously shifting with subtle movements of the pond, water, and his own tentacles. He studied these reflections with curiosity, noting the connection between inner state and external perception. Even in darkness, awareness remained a source of light, a tool for observing and engaging with the nuanced beauty of the nocturnal world. A faint current caused a gentle ripple across the plaza's water, interacting with reflections, algae, and passing fish. Squidward's attention followed the motion, observing the intricate, evolving patterns it created. He realized that the rhythm of night was a living, breathing entity, composed of countless small interactions that together formed a harmonious, meditative whole. The interplay of light, movement, sound, and touch carried him deeper into the experience, reinforcing his sense of connection with the living environment. He closed his eyes for a moment, allowing the multi-sensory experience to integrate fully into his awareness. The soft hum of nocturnal life, the gentle motion of water, the delicate flicker of bioluminescence, and the tactile feedback of currents merged into a unified, immersive state. Squidward's consciousness expanded to encompass both himself and the surrounding environment, creating a profound sense of calm and integration. The night deepened, and the plaza became quieter still. Squidward remained seated, observing and absorbing, each sensation contributing to a sustained meditation. Time seemed suspended, marked only by the subtle shifts of water, light, and nocturnal life. He allowed himself to drift gently along with this rhythm, fully immersed in the harmony of nightfall. Squidward whispered softly, acknowledging the profound tranquility of the moment. Night, currents, reflections. I am aware. I am present. I am calm. The words merged with the soft hum of water, the faint glow of bioluminescence, and the gentle sway of algae. Squidward felt a deep resonance, a seamless integration of inner awareness with external observation. The nocturnal rhythms of Bikini Bottom carried him into a state of reflective stillness, a quiet harmony that promised rest, presence, and continuity. He remained in this meditative state as the darkness fully enveloped the city, each ripple, flicker of light, and subtle sound reinforcing the rhythm of nightfall. In this quiet immersion, Squidward discovered the enduring value of observation, mindfulness, and deliberate presence. Even as the world around him drifted into slumber, he remained awake in awareness, connected to the continuous flow of life beneath the waves. Finally, Squidward rose slowly, leaving the water undisturbed. and began the return to his home. Each movement was deliberate and careful, reflecting the internal calm cultivated throughout the evening. The nocturnal harmony he had absorbed would accompany him into the night, carrying the rhythms of water, light, and life into his dreams. He settled once more near his window, allowing the memory of the plaza, the pond, and the subtle currents of the city to merge into a serene awareness. Squidward closed his eyes, breathing slowly, and felt the soft pulse of the ocean flow through him. A gentle lullaby of presence and quietude. With a whisper, he acknowledged the night, the currents, and the gentle rhythm of life. Nightfall, currents, harmony. I am present. I am still. I am at peace. And as the first deep currents of sleep approached, Squidward surrendered to the quiet embrace of night, fully immersed in the reflective, meditative rhythm that had defined his day, from morning music to twilight reflections, anchored in the enduring calm of Bikini Bottom. As Squidward finally sank fully into the comfort of his home, the gentle pulse of Bikini Bottom's night continued to surround him. The subtle hum of distant currents, the quiet shimmer of bioluminescent flora, and the occasional brush of nocturnal fish created a tranquil lullaby, carrying him softly from wakefulness into the threshold of dreams. He felt the familiar, grounding rhythm of his own breathing, each inhale and exhale flowing in perfect synchrony with the gentle currents outside his window. The world around him faded as his consciousness slipped into a lighter, dreamlike state. Yet even in this transitional space, Squidward's awareness remained gentle and deliberate, like a slow current moving beneath the surface of consciousness. Shapes and colors emerged softly in his mind, evoking memories of the day, the hidden lagoon, the reflective pond, the twilight plaza. Each image carried a subtle emotional resonance, a calm energy that anchored him in the continuity between waking presence and dreaming. In the beginning, his dreams were fluid and indistinct, like soft waves on the surface of a tranquil pond. Shadows and reflections intermingled with muted colors, moving gracefully as though guided by a gentle, invisible hand. Squidward observed these currents with a quiet, meditative focus, noticing how each ripple of light or movement influenced the evolving dreamscape. Even in sleep, the rhythm of awareness persisted, a subtle thread connecting the conscious and subconscious realms. He drifted further into the currents of his dreams, finding himself in a space reminiscent of the hidden lagoon he had explored earlier. The water shimmered with soft light, the algae swayed gently, and tiny fish glided gracefully past. The sensory elements of the dream mirrored those of reality, but with a fluid, ethereal quality. The pond reflected not only the surroundings, but also subtle fragments of his inner state, memories, emotions, and contemplative thoughts. Squidward floated effortlessly, fully immersed in this serene environment. Colors shifted slowly, blending blues, greens, and gentle golds, creating a soft, dynamic mosaic that responded to his awareness. Each subtle movement of light or shape carried a sense of harmony, and Squidward noticed how the patterns reflected both the fluidity of water and the flow of his own consciousness. The dream currents carried him forward without urgency, allowing him to observe, feel, and integrate with the environment fully. Small creatures appeared intermittently, bioluminescent fish, drifting seahorses, and tiny crabs moving carefully along soft sand. Each interaction with these creatures was gentle and unhurried, reinforcing the meditative quality of the dream. Squidward observed their paths with deliberate attention, noting the intricate interactions between life, water, and light. Even within the ephemeral realm of dreams, the principles of patience, observation, and harmony remained present. The currents of his dream shifted, carrying him to a shallow area where sunlight, or perhaps a soft glow of dreamlight, filtered through drifting algae. Shadows and reflections danced delicately, forming patterns that seemed almost musical in rhythm. Squidward followed these movements with focused awareness, recognizing in them the continuity of life's subtle harmonies. Every flicker of light, every ripple, every gentle sway contributed to a fluid, meditative tapestry. A soft, melodic hum arose, as if the water itself was resonating with the currents of his dreams. Squidward's attention tuned to this sound, noticing the faint vibrations and subtle variations in tone. The hum intertwined with the visual and tactile sensations of the dream, creating a holistic, immersive experience. He felt fully integrated with the environment, observing without expectation, letting each element exist and interact freely. His dreams shifted again, this time carrying him into an open underwater space resembling a quiet night in Bikini Bottom. The water glimmered with the faint luminescence of nocturnal flora, and distant shadows moved gently across the seabed. Squidward floated calmly, aware of the interplay of light, shadow, and movement. The currents seemed to carry him forward in slow, deliberate arcs, each motion guided by both the external environment and his internal rhythm. He became aware of a subtle reflection in the dream water, his own image mirrored among the ripples and glowing plants. Unlike waking reflection, this was fluid, almost alive, responding to shifts in thought, attention, and dream currents. Squidward observed without judgment, noticing how the mirrored self shifted gracefully, like a living pattern, emphasizing the interconnectedness of perception, awareness, and environment. The dream currents carried gentle breezes, soft scents, and faint tactile sensations. Even in the dream state, Squidward felt the subtle feedback of environment on awareness, the brush of algae against his tentacles, the shimmer of light across soft water, the quiet resonance of distant aquatic creatures. Each sensation anchored him deeper into presence, reinforcing a meditative flow that bridged waking mindfulness and dream consciousness. Time in the dream seemed expansive, yet unhurried, marked only by the ebb and flow of currents, patterns of light, and the movement of dream creatures. Squidward allowed his awareness to drift freely, observing the interplay between transient shapes, flowing currents, and his own contemplative focus. Each moment existed fully, carrying both depth and lightness, a seamless blend of observation and integration. A school of luminescent fish passed slowly, weaving in and out of floating algae with delicate precision. Squidward's gaze followed their synchronized movement, noticing the patterns of flow and reflection they created. The visual rhythm resonated with the gentle hum of the water, reinforcing the harmony and interconnectedness present in both the dreamscape and his own internal awareness. He felt a profound sense of calm as the dream current shifted yet again, carrying him toward a shallow coral grove bathed in soft, warm glow. The textures, colors, and movements were subtle but rich, each element contributing to the meditative experience. Squidward's focus remained deliberate and gentle, observing the evolving landscape with the same careful attention he had practiced during waking hours. The currents carried him forward into a larger open space where dreamlight danced across the water in delicate ripples, creating subtle, fluid mosaics. Squidward floated without effort, fully immersed in the sensory richness, aware of each detail, the gentle movement of plants, the reflective shimmer of water, the rhythmic pulse of aquatic life. Every element merged into a cohesive, meditative whole, emphasizing the quiet, flowing beauty of the underwater dream world. Soft echoes of nocturnal creatures filled the dream space, harmonizing with the gentle flow of currents and the shimmer of reflected light. Squidward allowed these sounds to become part of his consciousness, integrating them with visual, tactile, and emotional elements. The multisensory awareness created a sense of profound immersion, a state in which perception, thought, and reflection merged seamlessly. Eventually, the dream currents slowed, carrying Squidward toward a quiet, secluded area where gentle waves created mirrored patterns on the surface of the water. The reflection captured the subtle glow of bioluminescent flora and faint, distant shadows forming a serene tableau. Squidward observed the patterns with meditative attention, recognizing in them the delicate balance of presence, movement, and observation. He whispered softly within the dream, acknowledging the continuity of awareness across waking and dreaming states. Currents, light, reflection. I am here. I am calm. I am aware. The words echoed gently in the fluid environment, reinforcing the sense of integration and stillness. Squidward felt fully immersed in the dream currents, a participant and observer simultaneously, experiencing the harmony and interconnectedness of life in this tranquil, reflective space. As the dream deepened further, the currents carried him toward subtle, glowing pathways that twisted gently through the water, leading him toward an unseen horizon. The flow was slow, deliberate, and soothing, a perfect rhythm for contemplation and meditative reflection. Each ripple, each flicker of light, each passing creature contributed to a seamless, immersive experience, guiding him gently toward the quiet center of the dream. Squidward's awareness softened, blending with the currents themselves, becoming a subtle observer of movement, light, and reflection. He felt no urgency, no disturbance, only the gentle flow of the underwater dreamscape and the quiet integration of mind, body, and environment. Each moment carried a calmness that transcended ordinary perception, a meditative continuity that would carry through into waking hours. Finally, as the dream current slowed to a near stillness, Squidward felt a profound sense of presence, harmony, and completion. The hidden lagoons, reflective ponds, twilight plazas, and nocturnal streets all merged into a seamless tapestry of awareness, a gentle continuum of calm and observation. He whispered once more, surrendering fully to the tranquility of the dream. Dream currents. Flow. I am present. I am calm. I am at peace. And as the currents of the dream continued to ebb softly around him, Squidward drifted deeper into restorative sleep, fully immersed in the reflective, meditative rhythms that had carried him through the day, twilight, and night, a harmony of awareness and serenity that would remain with him beyond the confines of the dream. The first rays of sunlight filtered gently through Squidward's window, diffused by the soft sway of water above and the distant glimmer of coral structures outside. The subtle warmth of the light brushed across his skin, a quiet signal that another day in Bikini Bottom had begun. Squidward stirred slowly, not with urgency, but with deliberate awareness, letting his senses register the nuanced sounds, textures, and shifts in the environment. The morning light carried a gentle, contemplative quality, softening shadows and illuminating even the smallest details of the underwater city. He sat up slowly, stretching his tentacles with measured care, feeling the lingering pulse of the dream currents that had guided him through the night. The faint hum of early currents outside, the gentle flicker of bioluminescent flora still active in shaded areas, and the distant sounds of awakening sea life created a meditative symphony, drawing his attention to the continuity between the stillness of sleep and the subtle activity of morning. Squidward gazed out his window, observing the changing colors of the water as light penetrated the depths. Pale blues mingled with muted greens, and soft streaks of gold shimmered across coral formations and drifting algae. The motion of the water created intricate patterns on surfaces both near and far, constantly shifting in ways that were never the same twice. He allowed his eyes to follow these movements slowly, taking in the interplay of light, shadow, and motion with patient, deliberate focus. A small school of fish passed nearby, their synchronized movement casting fleeting reflections across the surrounding surfaces. Squidward watched them glide effortlessly through the currents, noting the subtle way each fin adjusted to flow with the water. The elegance and precision of their motion mirrored the meditative awareness he had cultivated in dreams and through the quiet observation of twilight and night. Each movement, though small, carried meaning and purpose, reinforcing the quiet, connected rhythm of life. He reached out, letting his tentacles hover above the window's edge, feeling the faint vibration of passing currents and the gentle brush of water against surfaces. The tactile feedback grounded him, complementing the visual and auditory details present in the morning. Every small sensation, the sway of algae, the flicker of reflected light, the distant hum of life, was absorbed fully, weaving a coherent tapestry of awareness that carried forward the meditative state from night and dream into waking consciousness. Squidward allowed himself to take a few deep, deliberate breaths, noticing the rise and fall of his chest, the subtle pressure of the water around him, and the way light played across surfaces near and far. With each inhalation, he absorbed the calm energy of morning. With each exhalation, he released residual tension from sleep. The process was slow, intentional, and immersive, establishing a foundation of presence that would guide him through the day. The morning currents brought new patterns to the water outside, shifting reflections and creating subtle ripples across coral and sand. Squidward's gaze followed these patterns, appreciating the delicate interactions of motion and reflection. He noticed how small disturbances, fish brushing past, the sway of algae, even distant shifts in current, transformed the visual texture of the scene. This awareness deepened his understanding of the interconnectedness of the environment and the importance of deliberate observation. Squidward leaned slightly closer, watching a single bubble rise to the surface, catching fragments of light as it twisted and turned. He followed its path patiently, noting how its movement influenced and interacted with surrounding currents and reflections. The bubble was ephemeral, yet its presence carried significance. A subtle reminder that each moment, no matter how brief, contributes to the ongoing rhythm of life. The faint sounds of morning life reached him. The gentle splash of fishtails in shallow channels, the soft brushing of algae in the current, and distant echoes of waking creatures communicating through clicks and hums. Squidward integrated these auditory cues with the visual and tactile sensations, creating a rich, multi-layered awareness. Each sensory input reinforced the meditative harmony of the moment, a seamless blend of perception and presence. The light gradually intensified, revealing textures and details that had been hidden in softer dawn shadows. Coral formations glimmered with delicate patterns, algae swayed rhythmically, and the water itself seemed to pulse with subtle energy. Squidward allowed his gaze to linger on these details, noting how each shift in illumination altered perception and emotional tone. The interplay of light and movement created a meditative focus, a slow unfolding of awareness that encouraged both observation and reflection. He observed the path of a passing seahorse, its deliberate motion weaving through currents and around floating algae. Squidward traced its path with quiet attention, appreciating the elegance of its interaction with the environment. The animal's movement seemed to carry its own rhythm, harmonizing with the morning currents and reinforcing the sense of flow that defined the underwater world. He felt a deep resonance with the creature, recognizing in its careful, deliberate motions a reflection of his own mindful awareness. A soft breeze from a distant channel stirred the water, producing tiny ripples and subtle vibrations across the surfaces near him. Squidward extended a tentacle into the current, feeling the subtle force and observing the resulting interactions. Each ripple, though small, created a dynamic interplay with reflections and other currents, a delicate balance of cause and effect. He marveled at the interconnectedness of all elements, noticing how even minor disturbances contributed to the larger rhythm of the morning. Squidward's attention shifted toward the broader cityscape, observing distant buildings, coral streets, and gentle undulations in the sand below. The soft morning light revealed textures that were previously hidden, patterns created by the interplay of natural formations and aquatic life. He allowed his awareness to expand gradually, taking in the environment without haste, noticing both the grand and minute elements, and appreciating the harmony of movement, reflection, and light. The currents outside continued to shift, producing subtle, flowing patterns across surfaces near and far. Squidward followed these movements with a calm, deliberate gaze, recognizing the meditative quality inherent in observation itself. Each pattern, each reflection, each ripple was transient yet meaningful, a part of the continuous flow of life that he had learned to notice and appreciate over days of quiet contemplation. As the light increased, tiny bioluminescent creatures, still active from the night, began to fade or retreat into shaded nooks, leaving space for the morning currents to dominate the visual rhythm. Squidward noticed how these transitions contributed to the overall meditative quality of the environment, teaching him that even disappearance and absence have their role in creating harmony. He took a final, slow breath, letting the morning air and light fill his senses completely. The combined awareness of tactile, visual, auditory, and emotional elements anchored him fully in the present, carrying the calm and insight of dreams, twilight, and night into waking reality. Squidward's body and mind felt aligned with the gentle flow of currents, the soft rhythm of life, and the steady unfolding of the day. Squidward whispered softly, acknowledging the continuity of presence across the transition from night to morning. Morning, light, currents, I am aware, I am present, I am calm. The words seemed to settle into the environment, merging seamlessly with the gentle hum of underwater life and the reflective patterns of water and light. Squidward felt a profound sense of integration, the enduring connection between inner mindfulness and the external world, reinforced by the quiet beauty of the early day. He allowed himself to remain in contemplative stillness for a few moments longer, observing the ripples, reflections, and faint movements in the water, integrating each detail into the ongoing meditation. The city, the pond, the currents, and the living elements of Bikini Bottom all contributed to a unified sense of calm, reminding him of the seamless flow of life and the importance of patient, deliberate awareness. Finally, Squidward began to move, carrying the calm of morning with him as he prepared to begin the day. Each tentacle moved deliberately, each breath was measured, and each perception was integrated into a quiet, meditative rhythm. The continuity of presence established through sleep, dream, twilight, and night remained, guiding him as he stepped into the soft, awakening light of Bikini Bottom. He whispered a final acknowledgement to himself, anchoring the morning awareness into his being. Day begins. Currents. Reflections. I am present. I am calm. I am aware. And as Squidward began his day, he carried the quiet, deliberate flow of the morning with him, a steady, meditative rhythm cultivated through reflection, observation, and immersion in the living, flowing world around him. The morning had fully settled over Bikini Bottom, and Squidward felt the gentle warmth of sunlight spread through the city, illuminating coral buildings, algae-lined streets, and the faint shimmer of passing currents. With measured steps, he left his home and entered the streets, attuned to the subtle pulse of life around him. Unlike the frantic energy of midday chaos, the city in the soft glow of morning had a flowing, almost deliberate rhythm, and Squidward allowed himself to walk in harmony with it. He observed the movement of water along the streets, small currents weaving between coral outcroppings and sandy pathways. Each ripple carried reflections of surrounding architecture, floating algae, and occasional passing fish. Squidward followed these patterns carefully, noticing how each subtle motion influenced the interplay of light, shadow, and color. The streets themselves seemed alive, their flowing currents guiding perception and thought in a slow, meditative cadence. Passing a small fountain-like channel where water trickled from a coral spout, Squidward paused to observe the interplay of droplets and light. Tiny splashes caught the sun, scattering miniature rainbows across the surface. Each droplet interacted with the gentle currents below, creating intricate, transient patterns. Squidward followed them with deliberate attention, noting how even minor details of movement contributed to the larger harmony of the environment. Along the street, algae swayed gently in response to flowing currents. Squidward extended a tentacle toward the nearest strands, feeling the subtle pressure and texture as they brushed against him. The sensation was grounding, a tactile anchor that complemented the visual rhythm of the streets and the faint auditory hum of flowing water. Every sense reinforced the others, weaving a comprehensive awareness of his surroundings. He noticed a group of small fish weaving through the currents between buildings, their movements synchronized and graceful. Squidward's gaze followed their trajectories, observing how each fin adjusted to the flow of water and interacted with other creatures. The motion created fleeting patterns in the light and shadows, a subtle choreography that echoed the meditative flow he cultivated in quieter moments. He allowed his mind to drift with these patterns, integrating observation and presence into a unified awareness. The morning sun shifted subtly as he continued walking, casting dynamic reflections across the water and streets. The movement of light enhanced textures and highlighted minor details of coral formations and algae clusters. Squidward observed these changes with calm attention, noticing the way illumination transformed perception and emotional tone. Each slight shift became an opportunity to deepen awareness and cultivate patience, a gentle meditation in motion. Passing an intersection, Squidward noticed how currents converged, creating small whirlpools and eddies that moved rhythmically. He crouched slightly to watch, letting his tentacles hover near the surface to feel the subtle movements. Each spiral and ripple produced delicate feedback, a dance of cause and effect that mirrored the interconnectedness of the streets and life within them. He observed silently, appreciating the balance between motion and stillness, the harmony of flow maintained by countless small interactions. The hum of morning activity reached him, distant calls of fish, faint scraping of claws along coral, and soft splashes as creatures navigated the flowing streets. Squidward integrated these sounds into his awareness, allowing them to blend seamlessly with visual and tactile cues. The multisensory immersion reinforced the meditative quality of his walk, emphasizing observation and presence over haste or distraction. A passing seahorse glided smoothly through an eddy, its delicate body twisting in harmony with the current. Squidward followed its movement with his gaze, noting the intricate interactions between creature and environment. The seahorse's motion was deliberate, yet effortless, a reminder that even in small actions, there exists purpose and rhythm. Squidward felt a kinship with the creature, recognizing the same careful attention and alignment with currents that he practiced in his own movements. Further along, Squidward encountered a shallow pool where sunlight penetrated through the water with remarkable clarity, illuminating small sand ripples and the occasional floating particle. He leaned closer, letting his tentacles hover over the surface, feeling subtle vibrations and observing the interplay of light, water, and movement. The pool became a focal point for meditation, each ripple and reflection offering insight into the continuous flowing nature of the streets themselves. Tiny bubbles occasionally surfaced, drifting lazily upward, catching light and refracting faint colors. Squidward traced each bubble, noting its path and the way it interacted with surrounding currents. Though fleeting, each bubble contributed to the ongoing flow of life, a delicate reminder of impermanence and the beauty of small details. Observing them reinforced the meditative practice of noticing and integrating subtle phenomena. The streets shifted in tone as currents moved between buildings, creating shifting reflections on coral walls and soft ripples across sand paths. Squidward allowed his awareness to expand, taking in both near and distant details. He noticed patterns forming in the water and in the reflections, interactions of light, motion, and color that created a living, ever-changing artwork. Each observation deepened his sense of harmony, a connection to both the city and the continuous rhythm of life. Squidward continued walking slowly, letting the morning currents carry him along the flowing streets. Each step was deliberate, mindful, and harmonized with surrounding motion. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile feedback created a multi-layered awareness that merged seamlessly with his internal state. He felt grounded, present, and attuned to the delicate balance of activity and stillness, movement and reflection that defined the underwater city. He paused at a quiet corner where algae swayed more gently, currents slowed, and light played softly across the water. Squidward extended a tentacle to trace the motion, observing how each subtle movement interacted with nearby elements. The experience reinforced his awareness of cause and effect, rhythm and flow, presence and observation. In this quiet intersection, the meditative quality of the streets became evident, an ongoing dialogue between environment and observer. The gentle hum of life continued, distant currents brushing against surfaces, faint chatter of small fish, and the soft ripple of passing shadows. Squidward allowed these sounds to weave seamlessly into the visual and tactile experience, creating a holistic awareness of flowing streets. Every small detail contributed to the larger harmony, reinforcing a deep sense of connection and presence. Further along, sunlight filtered through a canopy of floating algae, casting delicate moving shadows across coral pathways. Squidward observed these shadows, noting the subtle variations and patterns created by shifting light and motion. The interplay of brightness and darkness, flow and stillness, mirrored the balance within his own awareness, a continuous meditation in both sight and thought. He allowed himself to follow the gentle rhythm of the streets, moving with awareness rather than urgency, observing rather than interacting. Each flowing current, each pattern of light, and each subtle movement in the water became a point of reflection and mindful attention. Squidward felt deeply connected to the environment, fully immersed in the meditative cadence of Bikini Bottom's morning streets. A small fish darted through a narrow channel, creating tiny ripples that spread across the surface. Squidward observed these ripples, noticing how they intersected with existing currents and reflections, forming intricate, transient patterns. Even minor disturbances became opportunities for observation, integration, and reflection, reinforcing the ongoing meditative state. The interplay of movement, reflection, and sound continued to unfold as Squidward navigated the flowing streets. Each step, each gaze, each extended tentacle reinforced the connection between inner awareness and external environment. The streets themselves were a living meditation, a dynamic canvas where observation, presence, and rhythm merged seamlessly. He paused one final time near a quiet pool where the current was minimal, letting the soft flow carry faint reflections of light and movement. Squidward breathed slowly, absorbing the sensory input fully and integrating it into his ongoing awareness. The combination of flowing currents, delicate patterns, and subtle auditory cues reinforced the harmony between observer and environment. Squidward whispered softly, acknowledging the meditative rhythm of the morning streets. Flowing streets, currents, reflections. I am present. I am aware. I am calm. The words resonated with the soft hum of the city, the gentle ripple of water, and the subtle interplay of light and shadow. Squidward felt a profound sense of integration, the quiet harmony of observation, presence, and environment, carrying forward as he continued his deliberate exploration. As the sun rose higher, illuminating every corner of Bikini Bottom, Squidward continued to move along the flowing streets, carrying the calm, meditative awareness he had cultivated from dreams, twilight, night, and morning. Each current, reflection, and pattern became both a lesson and a companion in his ongoing practice of deliberate, contemplative presence. Squidward continued his deliberate journey through Bikini Bottom, following the subtle pull of the morning currents as they guided him toward a central area known to him only in quiet contemplation, the heart of the lagoon. This place, a convergence of flowing waters, shimmering coral, and gently swaying algae, had always offered him a sense of calm and meditative clarity, a location where the interplay of light, motion, and life revealed the rhythm underlying the city itself. The path to the lagoon was slow and measured, lined with narrow channels and small passages between coral structures. Each movement carried sensory richness, the delicate brush of algae against his tentacles, the faint vibrations of currents rippling beneath his touch, and the soft reflections of sunlight filtering from above. Squidward attuned himself fully to these details, recognizing that every step, every ripple, every glimmer of light contributed to the immersive experience of presence. As he approached the broader waters of the lagoon, the currents deepened and merged, creating a gentle pulse that resonated through both water and body. Squidward paused at the edge, feeling the subtle pressure of the combined flows, noting how their direction, speed, and temperature interacted with his own movements. The sensory feedback was grounding, anchoring his consciousness in the present while opening awareness to the complexity of the living environment. Above him, sunlight penetrated in scattered beams, refracted by shifting water and algae. The patterns of light on the lagoon floor were intricate and fluid, transforming constantly as currents moved and creatures passed by. Squidward allowed his gaze to follow these shifting mosaics, observing the interplay of color, motion, and reflection. Each subtle change provided insight into the interconnectedness of elements, a visual meditation that drew his attention into a deeper, more contemplative state. Small fish wove carefully through the Tasper People lagoon, their synchronized motions producing transient ripples that interacted with larger currents. Squidward observed their choreography with patient awareness, noting the delicate balance between individual movement and environmental influence. Even the smallest gestures, fins brushing water, bubbles rising, tiny glimmers of reflection, became meaningful, reinforcing the meditation of observation and mindful attention. He extended a tentacle into the water, feeling the gentle tug of microcurrents and the texture of soft algae. Each slight change in flow was registered in a continuum of sensory awareness, blending tactile, visual, and auditory elements. Squidward became aware of the dynamic interplay between his own presence and the lagoon, recognizing that even subtle participation altered the patterns and rhythms of the space. The ambient sounds of the lagoon added another layer of meditative richness. Distant clicks and hums of sea life. The soft rush of water around coral formations, and the faint, echoing movements of creatures hidden in shaded nooks. Squidward integrated these auditory cues seamlessly, allowing them to resonate in harmony with the visual and tactile impressions of the lagoon. The result was a holistic sensory immersion, a flowing awareness that encompassed both inner and outer perception. Sunlight continued to shift, altering the palette of reflections and illuminating different elements of the lagoon in turn. Coral structures revealed intricate textures and subtle color variations, while drifting algae and passing fish interacted to produce dynamic visual patterns. Squidward observed each detail with slow, deliberate attention, understanding that every minor shift contributed to the overall harmony of the space. Occasionally, a lone seahorse would drift past, gliding gracefully through the currents, adding rhythm and movement to the scene. Squidward traced its path carefully, noting the interaction between creature and environment. Its motion, fluid yet purposeful, mirrored his own slow, deliberate presence. Observing the seahorse, he felt an expanding sense of resonance with the rhythms of life, a deepening integration of mind, body, and surroundings. The lagoon's deeper areas reflected the light in muted, shimmering patterns, creating a soft, contemplative glow. Squidward allowed his gaze to drift across these areas, noting how subtle variations in depth, current, and texture produced endless, unfolding visual intricacies. Each shifting pattern became an invitation to remain fully present, reinforcing the calm and attentive awareness he had cultivated since morning, night, and twilight reflections. He noticed small bubbles rising from the lagoon floor, twisting and refracting light as they ascended. Each bubble carried a transient beauty, emphasizing the impermanence of momentary events and the importance of observation. Squidward followed the path of each one, noting how it interacted with surrounding currents, reflections, and passing creatures. These fleeting phenomena became meditative focal points, grounding awareness while illustrating the delicate complexity of life in continuous motion. The algae swayed gently with the currents, creating a rhythmic, almost musical motion. Squidward aligned his breathing with this subtle flow, inhaling deeply as the water moved past and exhaling slowly to release tension. The synergy between his own rhythm and the environment reinforced the sense of presence, a seamless integration of internal and external awareness. Each inhalation, exhalation, and observation was a conscious act, a meditation unfolding moment by moment. Above the lagoon, faint bioluminescent lights still lingered in shaded areas, their soft glow interacting with sunlight to produce a layered, dynamic illumination. Squidward observed the delicate balance of brightness and shadow, recognizing that light and dark were equally essential in shaping perception and awareness. The interplay became a metaphor for mindfulness itself. Every aspect of experience, whether subtle or prominent, transient or lasting, contributes to the rhythm and harmony of presence. He drifted slightly forward, letting currents carry him across the central area of the lagoon. Tentacles hovering gently in the water, he observed the interactions of reflection, movement, and light from multiple angles. The perspective shift revealed previously unnoticed patterns, the convergence of ripples, the twisting trajectories of small fish, the shimmer of sunlight through drifting algae. Each new detail offered an opportunity to deepen awareness and integrate observation into the meditative flow. The soft hum of aquatic life intensified slightly as more creatures became active in the warming morning currents. Squidward allowed the sounds to permeate his consciousness fully, perceiving the subtle patterns of movement, pulse, and rhythm inherent in the community of the lagoon. He noted that even in the midst of activity, the underlying harmony remained, a consistent flow of interconnected elements that carried both energy and tranquility. He extended a tentacle once more, letting it trace the surface of the water in small, deliberate arcs. The gentle drag created tiny ripples that interacted with currents and reflections, demonstrating the reciprocal relationship between self and environment. Squidward observed the results with focused attention, aware that even minimal participation influenced the evolving patterns of the lagoon. This awareness reinforced the meditative principle that presence itself is an active, dynamic engagement with the surrounding world. The central lagoon offered a profound vantage point. Squidward let his gaze expand across the water, taking in the broader context of coral structures, flowing currents, drifting algae, and passing creatures. Each element contributed to an intricate living mosaic, continuously shifting and yet harmoniously balanced. The perspective allowed him to appreciate the holistic integration of life, light, and motion, reinforcing both humility and wonder. Soft currents carried small leaves and debris across the lagoon, adding subtle motion and texture to the reflections. Squidward traced their paths, noting the interaction with other currents, bubbles, and fish. Each movement, although minor, created transient beauty and rhythm, emphasizing the significance of observation and presence in understanding interconnectedness. He whispered softly, acknowledging the harmonious flow of the lagoon. Lagoon, currents, reflections. I am present. I am aware. I am calm. The words merged with the subtle hum of flowing water, the gentle shimmer of sunlight, and the quiet activity of life within the lagoon. Squidward felt a profound resonance, a deep integration of sensory awareness and contemplative presence, reinforced by the rhythm of the living environment around him. As the morning progressed, Squidward allowed currents to guide him slowly toward the far edges of the lagoon, observing the subtle shifts in light, motion, and reflection along the way. The flowing streets, pools, and open waters converged into a seamless meditation, a continuous tapestry of observation, awareness, and harmony. He remained in the heart of the lagoon for an extended period, letting the flowing currents, reflections, and soft patterns of life create a dynamic, meditative space. Each ripple, each light shift, and each passing creature reinforced his connection to the environment, teaching the balance between stillness and motion, observation and participation, presence and reflection. Finally, Squidward rose slowly, allowing the central currents to remain undisturbed. Each movement was deliberate, measured, and harmonized with the rhythm of the lagoon. He carried the calm, attentive awareness cultivated in this sacred space as he prepared to continue his exploration of the city, integrating the part of the lagoon into his ongoing meditative journey. Squidward whispered a final acknowledgement, grounding the experience within himself. Heart of the lagoon, currents, reflection. I am present. I am calm. I am aware. And as the flowing waters of Bikini Bottom carried him gently onward, Squidward moved with deliberate care, fully immersed in the ongoing rhythm of life, light, and reflection, the harmony of the lagoon, a guiding pulse in his contemplative day. As Squidward left the heart of the lagoon, he allowed himself to drift slowly through the broader streets of Bikini Bottom, carrying the calm resonance of the water with him. The morning currents were gentle yet persistent, guiding his movements as he observed the interplay of light, shadow, and motion throughout the city. Every ripple across coral buildings, every swaying strand of algae, every tiny fish passing through the flowing water contributed to a meditative tapestry that Squidward allowed himself to experience fully. The city seemed to awaken around him gradually. The soft hum of distant activity, the gentle rustle of algae in the currents, and the faint, rhythmic vibrations of small creatures moving through their environment created a layered, immersive soundscape. Squidward integrated these auditory elements with the visual flow of the city and the tactile feedback of water brushing against his tentacles, forming a continuous awareness that connected him to the living rhythm of Bikini Bottom. He paused at a quiet intersection where sunlight penetrated in shifting beams, casting delicate mosaics on the sandy streets below. Tiny currents swirled between coral structures, creating a dynamic yet harmonious pattern of ripples and reflections. Squidward observed with patient focus, noticing how even minor movements, like a passing bubble or a flick of a fin, altered the intricate visual rhythm. Each change was an opportunity to remain present, to integrate observation and awareness into a continuous meditation. Nearby, a small school of fish glided through the water in coordinated arcs, their synchronized movement producing transient yet elegant patterns. Squidward followed their paths carefully, appreciating the subtle choreography and the fluid balance between individual agency and environmental influence. Observing their motion reinforced the meditative rhythm he had cultivated throughout the day. From twilight reflections to the heart of the lagoon, every movement, every interaction carried significance in the interconnected network of life. He noticed how sunlight shifted gradually, changing the reflections on buildings, sand, and water. Light danced across surfaces in constantly evolving patterns, revealing textures, contours, and subtle color variations that had previously gone unnoticed. Squidward allowed his gaze to follow these shifts, letting the interplay of illumination, shadow, and movement deepen his sense of connection to the city. Each small variation became a point of focus, a reminder that even in mundane surroundings, beauty and complexity persist for those who observe attentively. As he moved further, Squidward reached a broad plaza where multiple channels converged, creating gentle whirlpools and eddies in the flowing water. He extended a tentacle to trace the patterns, feeling the interaction of currents and the soft resistance of water against his touch. Each ripple formed a miniature dance, a delicate balance of motion and stillness. The plaza, with its dynamic patterns, became both a visual and tactile meditation, reinforcing the awareness he had nurtured through the lagoon and the flowing streets. Distant sounds of activity reached him, fish calling to one another, the faint scrape of claws along coral, and the gentle movement of water around passing creatures. Squidward integrated these auditory cues seamlessly with his visual and tactile impressions, creating a holistic perception of the city as a living, breathing organism. The rhythms of life, both subtle and obvious, contributed to an ongoing meditation, reminding him that awareness can be maintained amidst motion and activity. He noticed a lone seahorse drifting through a shallow channel, gliding effortlessly with the current. Squidward followed its path, observing how it responded to variations in flow, reflected light, and surrounding movement. The creature's deliberate, yet effortless motion resonated with his own meditative state, emphasizing harmony between observer and environment. Each curve, pause, and subtle adjustment became a point of reflection on patience, balance, and integration. The plaza's water shifted gently as sunlight continued to move across the city, casting long, flowing reflections on nearby coral and sandy streets. Squidward allowed his awareness to expand, taking in both the fine details of ripples and reflections, as well as the broader spatial patterns created by currents and light. The contrast of scale, small bubbles, drifting algae, and flowing streets provided a layered experience, a reminder that observation can exist simultaneously in detail and in context. Small bubbles drifted upward, twisting and refracting light, forming fleeting prisms that caught Squidward's attention. He followed their paths with careful awareness, noticing how they interacted with surrounding currents, reflections, and passing fish. The ephemeral beauty of the bubbles became a meditation in impermanence, highlighting the transient yet meaningful nature of every moment within the city's rhythm. Squidward paused at a shallow channel where sunlight illuminated delicate coral formations. He traced the intricate textures with a tentacle, feeling subtle ridges, soft growths, and slight vibrations from currents passing over the surface. Each tactile sensation reinforced the visual complexity of the city and deepened the meditative quality of his observation. Presence became not only mental but physical, an integration of sight, touch, and awareness. The currents of the plaza shifted subtly, creating new patterns of ripples and reflections across water and sand. Squidward allowed his gaze to follow the motion, noting how even the smallest disturbances, passing fish, shifting light, floating debris, produced intricate, evolving patterns. Observation required patience, attention, and calm acceptance, qualities that had defined his experience from nightfall through morning. Exploration. Above him, algae swayed gently with the water, casting moving shadows on the streets below. Squidward allowed his breathing to synchronize with the rhythm of the swaying plants, inhaling as they rose and exhaling as they fell. The integration of internal and external rhythms deepened the sense of meditative presence, anchoring awareness in both his own body and the environment. Sunlight intensified gradually, illuminating further reaches of the city and revealing previously hidden details of coral structures, sand patterns, and flowing water. Squidward's gaze followed the transitions, noting how shadows lengthened, reflections shifted, and currents adapted to subtle changes in temperature and light. Each observation was an exercise in patient attention, an acknowledgement of the continuous flow and interconnectedness of urban life in Bikini Bottom. He observed a small fish weaving through the channels, adjusting its motion to the flow of water while interacting with drifting algae. The fish's movement became a visual meditation, a delicate pattern of cause and effect that mirrored the interplay of Squidward's own movements and awareness. Watching the creature reinforced a sense of harmony, patience, and attunement to subtle dynamics within the city. Squidward moved slowly, deliberately, following currents that carried him past interconnected plazas, shallow channels, and flowing streets. Each location offered a slightly different rhythm, light quality, and interaction of life, yet the underlying continuity of presence and awareness persisted. He allowed his focus to shift seamlessly between micro details and macro patterns, integrating them into a cohesive, meditative perception. He paused near a quiet pool where light refracted through gentle ripples, creating a dynamic mosaic of reflection. Tiny bubbles drifted upward, fish swam lazily past, and algae swayed with the currents. Squidward extended a tentacle to trace a ripple, feeling subtle variations in water pressure and flow. The tactile, visual, and auditory experiences merged, forming a holistic, multisensory meditation. A faint hum of life surrounded him, distant clicks, gentle splashes, and soft movements. Squidward allowed these sounds to integrate seamlessly with his awareness of reflection, motion, and tactile sensation. The city itself became a living meditation, a dynamic network of flowing streets, converging currents, and reflective surfaces. Each element contributed to an ongoing rhythm of presence, observation, and connection. He noticed how sunlight shifted across surfaces, highlighting textures of coral, sand, and water in a constantly evolving visual landscape. Squidward followed these changes patiently, observing both minute details and broader patterns. The movement of light, the flow of currents, and the interactions of living creatures created a meditative symphony, emphasizing the harmony and rhythm of the city. Squidward allowed himself to drift further, following a gently flowing street toward an open intersection where multiple channels converged. Each current produced unique patterns, interacting with reflections, algae, and passing creatures. He observed with deliberate care, noting the interplay between movement, stillness, light, and sound. Each subtle interaction became a point of meditation, reinforcing awareness and calm. He whispered softly, acknowledging the ongoing harmony of the city. Bikini Bottom. Currents, reflections, I am present, I am aware, I am calm. The words merged with the gentle hum of flowing water, the soft shimmer of sunlight, and the delicate activity of life throughout the city. Squidward felt a profound resonance, a holistic integration of observation, presence, and environmental rhythm, carrying forward the calm cultivated from lagoon, streets, and plazas into a deeper awareness of the city as a living, flowing whole. As he continued, Squidward allowed his presence to move naturally with the currents, observing patterns and integrating sensory input without haste. The flowing streets, reflective pools, and converging currents formed a continuous meditation, a seamless rhythm of light, motion, and life. Each observation, each subtle interaction, reinforced the sense of calm, attentiveness, and presence that had become central to his journey. Finally, Squidward paused at a central plaza overlooking several channels. The morning sun cast shifting reflections across water and coral. Small fish moved in synchronized arcs, and gentle currents carried floating algae past his tentacles. He breathed deeply, integrating visual, auditory, and tactile sensations into a single, cohesive awareness. Squidward whispered once more, anchoring his observation and presence. Reflections across the city, currents, light. I am present, I am calm, I am aware. And as the morning continued, Squidward carried this meditative awareness with him, fully immersed in the flowing, reflective rhythm of Bikini Bottom, each street, current, and pool a continuous invitation to mindful observation and serene presence. As the day progressed, the golden light of the afternoon gradually softened, and Squidward felt the subtle transition toward evening. The streets of Bikini Bottom retained their flowing rhythms, yet the quality of light, The depth of shadows and the gentle cooling of currents signaled the approach of twilight. Squidward moved deliberately, carrying the meditative awareness cultivated throughout the day, through lagoon currents, flowing streets, and reflective plazas, back toward his home. He noticed the way the light transformed every surface it touched. Coral buildings glowed softly, algae swayed with a gentle grace, and currents carried reflections that shimmered in quiet, undulating patterns. Each detail invited patient observation, a continuation of the meditative practice that had defined his journey. Squidward's gaze lingered on these patterns, following ripples, shadows, and reflections, allowing himself to become fully absorbed in the rhythm of twilight. Passing a quiet plaza where currents converged, Squidward paused to observe the interplay of water and light. The gentle merging of small eddies created intricate ripples, reflecting fading sunlight in dynamic, shimmering mosaics. Tiny fish navigated these flows with effortless precision, their coordinated movements producing patterns that echoed the continuity of the environment. Squidward's awareness absorbed every detail, integrating tactile feedback, visual complexity, and the faint auditory hum of life into a cohesive, immersive experience. He traced the edge of the plaza with a slow, deliberate step, allowing his tentacles to hover just above the surface of water channels. The currents tugged gently, and algae swayed with subtle resistance, providing sensory input that grounded his awareness in both body and environment. Each ripple, each small reflection, and each movement of passing creatures became a point of focused observation, reinforcing the integration of internal calm with external rhythm. The ambient sounds of twilight, faint clicks of distant sea creatures, the soft rush of water along coral formations, and subtle echoes of movement formed a rich, multi-layered soundscape. Squidward allowed these sounds to blend seamlessly with his visual and tactile impressions, creating a meditation that was both active and receptive. Every note of life contributed to the subtle symphony of the evening, a reminder that harmony is present even as light and activity diminish. As he continued, Squidward noticed the softening of colors as the day faded. Blues deepened, greens muted, and the golden tones of afternoon gradually gave way to the cooler hues of evening. Shadows lengthened and merged, reflecting the stillness that accompanied the waning light. Squidward observed these changes with patient awareness, noting how subtle variations in illumination and color influenced perception and emotional tone. Each detail, each transition, offered an opportunity to remain present, integrating observation with reflective calm. The streets began to quiet as fewer creatures moved actively in the slowing currents. Squidward observed the gentle decrease in activity, noting how the environment itself seemed to prepare for rest. Currents became slower and softer, reflections more diffuse, and shadows more encompassing. The city was entering a natural rhythm of twilight, and Squidward's awareness mirrored this transition, adapting with ease and grace. He paused near a quiet pool, allowing the gentle eddies to carry floating algae past his tentacles. Tiny bubbles drifted upward, catching the fading light and creating ephemeral prisms. Each bubble, each ripple, each interaction became a subtle lesson in impermanence and observation, emphasizing the transient beauty of the moment. Squidward's breathing synchronized with the flowing currents, reinforcing the continuity of inner and outer rhythm. Above him, faint bioluminescent lights began to appear in shaded areas, their soft glow complementing the waning sunlight. The interplay of natural light and bioluminescence produced a layered, dynamic visual field where shadows, reflections, and gentle illumination coexisted in delicate harmony. Squidward allowed himself to absorb the subtleties fully, following the fluid motion of currents and patterns with quiet, deliberate attention. The heart of the lagoon called to him once more, a central anchor in his meditative journey. Squidward moved toward it, feeling the currents guide his deliberate steps, tracing the familiar paths between coral, sand, and water. The combination of sensory input, light, motion, tactile feedback, and ambient sound created a rich, immersive environment that invited presence and reflection. Every detail reinforced a sense of calm, integration, and continuity. He observed the gentle merging of currents within the lagoon, noticing how the water interacted with floating algae, passing fish, and drifting sand particles. Subtle patterns emerged, shifted, and dissolved, creating a dynamic, ever-changing meditation in movement and reflection. Squidward's awareness followed each ripple, each reflection, each minor disturbance, integrating the experiences into a holistic understanding of rhythm and harmony. As twilight deepened, the light shifted towards soft purples and muted blues, reflecting across the surface of the lagoon in delicate gradients. Shadows became longer, merging across shallow channels, coral walls, and sandy pathways. Squidward allowed his attention to expand across the scene, taking in both micro details and macro patterns. The combination of subtle sensory inputs created a seamless, flowing awareness that bridged perception, observation, and contemplative presence. A small seahorse drifted through the central currents, moving with slow elegance. Squidward traced its path with patient observation, noting the delicate balance between motion and stillness, light and shadow, individual movement, and environmental flow. The creature's graceful navigation echoed his own meditative awareness, reinforcing the unity of presence and the subtle dialogue between observer and environment. He allowed himself to settle near a gentle whirlpool at the center of the lagoon, extending a tentacle into the flowing water and feeling the dynamic, yet soft, pressure of currents. The tactile sensation harmonized with the visual complexity of reflections, the motion of passing creatures, and the ambient hum of life. Each aspect of the environment contributed to a holistic meditation, a flowing awareness that encompassed body, mind, and surroundings. The soft ambient sounds of evening, bubbles rising, distant clicks, water brushing coral, created a continuous auditory rhythm. Squidward merged these sounds with the visual flow of light and motion, cultivating a meditative presence that was both receptive and engaged. Each detail reinforced the lesson of attentive observation, that every minor element contributes to a cohesive, living rhythm of the city. As the final light of day faded, Squidward felt the subtle shift in currents, the soft merging of eddies, and the gentle stillness of pools and channels. The city, lagoon, and flowing streets were preparing for rest, and his awareness aligned effortlessly with this transition. He allowed himself to inhale deeply, filling his senses with the remaining warmth, motion, and life, and exhale slowly, releasing residual tension and mental clutter. He whispered softly to anchor his awareness, integrating the day's journey. Twilight, currents, reflections. I am present. I am calm. I am aware. The words merged with the ambient sounds of the lagoon and city, creating a subtle resonance that lingered in both mind and environment. Squidward felt a profound sense of completion, a holistic integration of the day's meditative exploration, from early morning currents, flowing streets, and the heart of the lagoon to reflective intersections and the soft settling of twilight. He allowed himself to drift gently along the final currents, following familiar pathways toward his home. Tentacles hovered in flowing water, eyes absorbed shifting reflections, and ears registered the subtle hum of evening life. Every detail was absorbed into an ongoing meditation, a seamless continuity between perception, presence, and reflection. Arriving at his front door, Squidward paused once more, observing the familiar channels and nearby coral formations. The city was quiet, the water still and reflective, and the soft glow of bioluminescence complemented the fading twilight. He took a deep breath, letting the calm of the day settle fully into body and mind, appreciating the steady rhythm of currents, light, and life that had guided him through the hours. Squidward whispered one final acknowledgement, a quiet benediction to the environment and to his own awareness. Twilight return, currents, reflection. I am present. I am calm. I am whole. And as the evening embraced Bikini Bottom, Squidward moved inside his home, tentacles relaxed, body calm, and mind fully immersed in the serene continuity of life, light, and flowing water. The day's journey had ended, but the meditative rhythm of observation, awareness, and reflection would continue within him, carrying forward the quiet harmony cultivated throughout morning, lagoon, streets, plazas, and twilight into the restorative embrace of night. In the stillness of his home, Squidward finally allowed himself to sink fully into rest. The soft hum of water, the gentle sway of algae, and the subtle reflections of fading light created a final, encompassing meditation. Breathing in sync with the currents, he felt the continuity of presence stretch beyond the day, beyond the streets, beyond the lagoon, a seamless flow connecting observer, environment, and the calm rhythm of life itself. With that, Squidward closed his eyes, letting the twilight currents carry him gently into the restorative quiet of night.